The failure who flipped off the system and became a goddamn force of nature. Dark magic pulsing, katana always ready. This blunt asshole crushes every threat, builds a legendary team, and stays unbothered while the world burns. Zero fucks given, all power delivered. Peak legend shit.
This is the story of that boy, Naruto Uzumaki, the dead last, the failure. The kid who flunked the academy graduation exam twice because he refused on principle out loud to the instructor's face to learn the clone jutsu. "Why would I make copies of myself?" he had said, feet on the desk, a toothpick between his teeth because he was too young for cigarettes at that point, when the real thing is already more than anybody here can handle. Iruka had given him a 0. Naruto had shrugged. The class had laughed. They stopped laughing about 8 months later, when Naruto came back from his second failed attempt, a full 4 inches taller, 20 pounds heavier, carrying a katana longer than Iruka's arm, and leaking an aura so heavy that 3 students in the front row started sweating the moment he walked through the door. He sat in the back. He put his feet up. He slept through every lecture. And when the 3rd graduation exam came around, he passed the taijutsu portion by throwing one punch that sent the training dummy through the academy's back wall and into the school garden. A garden that had to be replanted because the dummy kept going through the fence, across the street, and into a civilian's cart of watermelons. He passed the ninjutsu portion by releasing a single pulse of dark chakra so thick and so suffocating that the proctor marked him as adequate, with shaking hands, and moved on before anything else happened. He failed the clone jutsu portion again. He still graduated. Nobody argued about it. The Hokage signed off personally, and what the Hokage signed off on was law, and everyone in that room knew, felt it in their chest like a second heartbeat, that keeping Naruto Uzumaki in the academy for another year would be like keeping a tiger in a birdcage. Sooner or later, something would break, and it was going to be the cage, so he graduated. A year late, a head taller than everyone in his class, with a jaw scar he refused to explain, and hands rough enough to sand wood. Blonde hair falling in uncombed chaos over sharp blue eyes that looked at you the way a predator looks at something beneath its notice. Broad shoulders that made the standard issue jacket strain at the seams. A katana resting on his right shoulder like it had always been there, like it was born there, like it would take a natural disaster to separate the blade from the boy. And now, the question that had kept Hiruzen Sarutobi awake for 3 consecutive nights, puffing through his pipe fast enough to fill his office with a permanent haze. What team do you put this kid on? Hiruzen sat behind his desk with the team assignment paper spread before him like a battlefield map. The faces of every available Jonin instructor floated through his mind, and one by one he dismissed them. Kakashi Hatake, an excellent teacher, patient with talent, firm with laziness. Naruto would eat him alive in a battle of wills. Kakashi's entire approach relied on cool detachment and subtle guidance, and Naruto responded to subtlety the way a brick wall responded to polite suggestions. Kurenai Yuhi, Genjutsu specialist. Naruto's ki sense, that bizarre unnamed ability to read life energy, an ability Hiruzen had watched develop from instinct into something fully active and terrifying, meant Genjutsu failed against him before it formed. Kurenai would spend every session being undermined by a student who could see through everything she tried to teach. Asuma Sarutobi, already tried. The result, Naruto had spent a single afternoon with Asasuma, stolen his entire pack of cigarettes, called his wind release pretty but slow, and walked away smoking with zero apparent guilt. Asuma had come home that evening and told his father, the Hokage, the god of shinobi, that the Uzumaki kid was kind of terrifying. And probably fine, honestly, just keep him away from my stuff. That left one option, the only Jonin in the village who had never once been intimidated by anything, because the concept of intimidation bounced off him like rain off a mountain. The only instructor whose training philosophy matched Naruto's existence. Push past the limit, break the wall, become something beyond what anyone believed possible. Might Guy. Hiruzen signed the paper. He felt the oddest sensation. The feeling of dropping a lit match into a barrel of oil and hoping the resulting explosion would blow in the right direction. Training ground. 9 smelled like fresh grass and old sweat. The morning sun cut through the trees at a low angle, making everything gold and sharp. 3 Genin stood in a loose semicircle around their Jonin instructor, who was doing what he always did, standing with one hand on his hip, the other giving a thumbs up, teeth gleaming with a shine that seemed to generate its own light source. Neji Hyuga stood with his arms crossed, Byakugan dormant, face arranged into an expression of perfect aristocratic indifference. Beside him, Tenten had her scroll slung across her back and a curious energy in her stance, ready for anything, expecting everything. And Rock Lee, in his green spandex, was vibrating at a frequency that suggested he might achieve flight through enthusiasm alone. "My precious students!" Guy roared, and the birds in the nearest 3 trees took off simultaneously. Today marks a glorious chapter in your youthful journey. We have been blessed, I say, with a 4th member, a late-blooming flower of explosive potential, a flame that burns. Jesus, I can hear you from across the village. The voice came from behind them, low, rough, carrying the weight of someone who was already annoyed and the day had barely started. They turned. Naruto Uzumaki walked toward them through the morning light like a storm system given legs. He was massive, taller than Neji, broader than Guy's Genin should reasonably be, his standard jacket open over a black undershirt stretched across a chest that looked carved from training nobody had supervised. The katana rested on his shoulder. An unlit cigarette sat between his lips. His blue eyes scanned the group with the flat, unhurried assessment of someone cataloging threats and finding them all wanting. The dark aura, invisible to the eye but crushing to the senses, announced itself before he reached them. Like the air gained weight, like gravity found an extra gear. Tenten felt it first and took a step backward before she realized she was doing it. Lee felt it, and his eyes went wide. Something in his gut recognized what was walking toward him, and it was thrilling and terrifying in equal measure. Neji felt it, and his jaw tightened. Guy felt it, and his smile impossibly grew wider. There he is. Guy lunged forward with both arms open. The 4th flame of Team Guy. "Touch me and I'll break your arms, spandex." Guy stopped. The tears were already forming. He was overwhelmed. Direct communication, the honesty of youth, the raw, unfiltered. "I said I'd break them." Guy sobbed harder. He was somehow more inspired by the threat. This man was immune to hostility in a way that defied physics. Naruto stopped walking about 6 feet from the group. He looked at Lee. He looked at Tenten. He looked at Neji. Neji looked back. His pale eyes, the eyes of the Hyuga's branch family, marked by talent and cursed by circumstance, traveled over Naruto's form with open contempt. So, the dropout finally crawled his way to a team. Naruto pulled the cigarette from his mouth and held it between 2 fingers, unlit. Neji continued, because he was a genius and geniuses talked when they should have stayed silent. "A year behind schedule, holding the team back before we begin. I suppose destiny makes space for every kind of failure." Naruto lit the cigarette. One flick of a match, one slow drag, and then he blew the smoke directly into Neji's face. The cloud hung there, heavy, dark-tinged, wrong in a way regular smoke had zero right to be. The dark aura Naruto constantly leaked pressed down on the training ground like an invisible hand pushing everyone toward the earth. The birds were gone. The insects were gone. The only sound was the wind in the trees and the slow exhale of a teenager who was looking at Neji Hyuga the way a wolf looks at something yapping. "Listen here, princess," Naruto said. His voice carried zero heat. It carried something worse, absolute certainty. "I don't give a crap about your superiority complex. Keep annoying me and I'm going to kill you." The training ground held its breath. Tenten had her hand on her scroll without remembering reaching for it. Lee was staring with his mouth open, fists clenched at his sides, something electric racing through his entire nervous system. Neji, for the first time in his life, in a moment so brief he would deny it ever happened, felt his next words die in his throat. The silence lasted 3 seconds. Then Guy erupted. "Magnificent!" The tears were waterfalls. His fist pumped toward the sky. "The passion!" The conviction, the absolute youthful fire burning in your "you're too loud" spandex. Naruto put the cigarette back between his teeth and turned away. I'm going to the can. He walked toward the tree line without looking back. The dark aura receded with him like a tide pulling out, and the training ground seemed to lighten, to breathe again in his absence. The birds came back. The insects resumed their noise. The world returned to its ordinary weight. Behind him, the training ground was silent for 5 full seconds. Then Lee fell to his knees. His fists hit the dirt. His eyes were blazing with something that went beyond admiration, beyond respect. It was a complete cellular commitment. That man, his voice was shaking. He is incredible. The aura, the confidence, the absolute lack of concern for social Kangai-sensei. Lee, I have found my eternal inspiration. Lee! They were hugging. They were weeping. A sunset had appeared behind them despite it being 8 in the morning, and this was something the universe simply allowed for Guy and Lee without explanation or apology. Tenten watched the tree line where Naruto had disappeared. She opened her notebook. She wrote, "New teammate. Terrifying. Smokes. Might actually kill Neji. Keep distance." She underlined "keep distance" twice. Neji stood still. His hands were loose at his sides, his face was back to its mask of indifference, and the Byakugan was active now, scanning the tree line, scanning the residual dark energy Naruto had left hanging in the air like a stain. His chakra system was dense, absurdly dense. The flow was wrong, heavier than anything Neji had seen, darker in a way the Byakugan struggled to parse, like looking at a river that had become tar overnight. Neji said nothing. He filed the information away. He told himself it meant nothing, that destiny still applied, that failure was still written, that a dramatic entrance changed nothing about a person's fundamental nature. He almost convinced himself. The first week of Team Guy was chaos compressed into a schedule. Guy's training regime was insane by anyone's standard. 1,000 push-ups, 1,000 squats, laps around the village with weights, taijutsu sparring until your hands were bleeding and your legs forgot what standing was. Lee threw himself into every session with religious fervor, matching Guy rep for rep, sometimes pushing past him in sheer determination. Tenten trained her accuracy until her fingers bled, every weapon finding its mark within a millimeter. Neji refined his forms, the gentle fist flowing through his movements like water through carved channels. Naruto showed up late every single day. He did the exercises, he matched the reps, he ran the laps, and he did all of it while carrying his katana on his shoulder and somehow looking like the entire thing was wasting his time. Where Lee screamed with effort on his 500th push-up, Naruto was on his 800th with a flat expression and a burning cigarette balanced on his lower lip, ash falling onto the ground with each rep. Naruto! Guy appeared beside him with tears already forming. Your form is magnificent. The raw power. The spandex, I'm counting. Shut up. The dismissive attitude that masks a deeper youthful. 842, 843. I love this team. The dynamic settled into something strange and alive within days. Lee attached himself to Naruto like a barnacle made of enthusiasm. He followed him after training. He asked questions constantly. He wanted to know everything. How Naruto got that strong, how he moved like that, how the sword worked, what the dark energy was, everything. Naruto's response was consistent. Leave me alone, Brows. Lee's interpretation of this was equally consistent. Naruto-kun is testing my dedication through rejection. I will prove my worthiness. It should have been annoying, and it was, genuinely, tooth-grindingly annoying. But there was something about Lee that Naruto recognized in the back of his skull, in the place where instinct lived instead of thought. A kid with zero natural talent and absolute conviction. A kid who decided to be strong without any of the tools that made strength easy, and who threw himself at the wall every single day until the wall broke or his bones did. There was something familiar about that. Something that resonated in a chamber of Naruto's soul he had never examined closely. He kept telling Lee to go away. Lee kept showing up. 3 weeks in, during a training session where Lee was struggling with a new taijutsu combination, his timing was off, his transitions were sloppy, and frustration was building behind his round eyes. Naruto stopped his own training. He walked over. He stood behind Lee with his arms crossed and his cigarette trailing smoke into the afternoon air. Your hips are wrong, Naruto said. Lee froze mid-kick. He turned slowly, eyes enormous. Nen, Naruto-kun, lower your center. You're fighting like you want to hit something above you. Hit what's in front of you. Root your weight, transfer through the hip, let the leg be the delivery system. He said it flat, bored even, like it was obvious, and he was mildly insulted to be explaining it. Lee adjusted. He threw the combination again. The difference was instant. The transition snapped into place, the kick landed with twice the force, and the training post cracked down its center. Lee stared at the cracked post. He turned back to Naruto. His eyes were dinner plates. His lower lip was trembling. Naruto-kun, if you cry, I'm leaving. Lee was already crying. The floodgates opened. Your guidance, your belief in me. I will carry this lesson in my heart, for I'm leaving. Please, one more correction, just one. I'm gonna kill you. That's what you said last time, and you still helped me. Naruto was already walking away, and the cigarette between his teeth was doing absolutely nothing to hide the slight, microscopic, invisible to anyone without a Byakugan, upturn at the corner of his mouth. Tenten saw it. She added to her notebook, might actually be a good person underneath all of that. Still terrifying. Still keeping distance. Neji did everything in his power to pretend Naruto was irrelevant. It lasted 6 days. On the 6th day, during team sparring, Guy paired Naruto and Neji for a taijutsu-only match. Rules: no weapons, no ninjutsu, pure hand-to-hand combat. First to concede or hit the ground 3 times, Neji activated his Byakugan. He dropped into the gentle fist stance. 64 points of attack mapped against the chakra system, every strike designed to close the tenketsu and kill the flow. Against any normal opponent, this was a death sentence delivered in silence. Against most jonin, this was a serious problem. Naruto stood with his hands in his pockets. Begin! Guy called. Neji moved. Fast. Genuinely fast, prodigy fast, the kind of speed that comes from years of dedicated practice starting before your hands were big enough to make proper fists. He struck for the tenketsu in Naruto's right arm, a 3-point sequence that should seal the chakra flow and deaden the limb in under a second. His fingers hit Naruto's arm. The strike landed. The tenketsu did something wrong. Neji's fingers met the dark energy flowing through Naruto's system, and it was like jabbing into liquid iron, thick, heavy, and completely indifferent to external pressure. The point refused to close. The flow refused to stop. His Byakugan showed him what was happening, and it made 0 sense. The chakra was so dense that his targeted strikes were surface-level disturbances against an ocean of dark pressure. Naruto looked at his arm where Neji had hit him. He looked at Neji. That tickled. Neji hit him again. And again. A full sequence of 16 strikes, everyone perfect. Everyone targeted, everyone landing on a body that absorbed the impacts like rain into a lake. The tenketsu would flex under the pressure and then reassert themselves, the dark energy pushing back harder than anything Neji had ever tried to seal. By the 8th strike, Naruto yawned. By the 12th, he said, "You done, princess?" By the 16th, Neji's composure cracked. He threw a palm strike at Naruto's chest with full force, abandoning the precise targeting for raw impact. Naruto caught the palm in his hand. One grab, the fingers closed. Neji's forward momentum stopped dead, his entire body jerking to a halt like he had run into a wall. Then Naruto pulled. The motion was simple, a yank forward that put Neji off balance, followed by a shoulder that Naruto drove into his chest. The impact lifted Neji off his feet. He hit the ground rolling, got up, found his footing, and looked back at Naruto with his jaw clenched and his pride hemorrhaging. "One," Naruto said. It happened 2 more times, each time faster. Each time, Neji tried something different. Rotation angles, strike sequences, footwork variations. And each time, Naruto read his ki before the attack launched, knew exactly where every strike was going, and either caught it, redirected it, or simply walked through it like Neji was hitting him with rolled up newspapers. 3. The match was over. Neji stood with dirt on his white training clothes and nothing in his expression, giving away the earthquake happening behind his eyes. He had trained since he could walk. He had been told, by his family, by his circumstances, by the seal on his forehead, that the gentle fist was his ceiling and his floor, his weapon and his cage, everything he would ever have and everything he would ever need. And this kid, this dropout, this failure, this cigarette-smoking slab of muscle who refused to learn the clone jutsu, had stood inside the most refined combat system in Konoha and been bored by it. Neji turned and walked to the edge of the field without a word. Lee was crying again. Naruto-kun is invincible. Tenten was writing. Confirmed. Do not fight Naruto. Ever. Under any circumstances. Carry extra scrolls. Guy was beaming. Somewhere behind that magnificent smile, the sublime green beast of Konoha was doing his own calculations. And what those calculations were telling him was that the boy standing in the center of the training field with his hands back in his pockets was something Konoha had never produced before. Something ancient wearing new skin. 2 months passed. Team Guy took missions. D ranks that bored everyone equally. C ranks that gave Neji and Lee and Tenten room to grow, while Naruto leaned against trees and smoked. He took out targets they missed. He covered blind spots they forgot about. He did all of it with the energy of a man doing someone else's chores, and somehow it worked. The team gelled around his gravity. Neji pushed himself harder because the alternative was being irrelevant. Lee trained with renewed frenzy because Naruto's corrections, rare, blunt, always right, were the most valuable instruction he had ever received. Tenten learned to read the flow of battle by watching Naruto move through it, and her accuracy went from excellent to frightening. Guy cried about it daily. The youthful flames were at peak intensity. The speeches happened at minimum 4 times per session. Naruto threatened to kill him at minimum 8 times per session. It was functional. It was a team. Then the mission came. The scroll said C rank. Bandit encampment in the mountain passes north of the Land of Fire. Roughly 60 combatants, former mercenaries who had set up toll operations on a critical trade route and were bleeding civilian caravans dry. Standard stuff for a 4-man squad with a Jonin lead. Guy unrolled the map in the team's meeting spot. Neji leaned in with his Byakugan already reading the terrain layout. Tenten traced approach vectors with her finger, marking choke points and defensible positions. Lee was stretching, ready to run through walls if needed. Naruto sat on a log behind them, smoking. The optimal approach, Neji said, his voice flat, precise. Wait, he said. The best approach would be a flanking maneuver through the eastern ridge. Their sentries are concentrated on the main road. If Tenten provides suppressive fire from elevation while Lee and I breach from the... Boring. Everyone looked at Naruto. He took a drag off his cigarette, let the smoke out slow, stood up. The katana shifted on his shoulder as he rose, a motion that drew the eye the way a gun cocking drew the ear. A real man kicks the front door down, Naruto said. He started walking north. You guys can flank if you want. I'm walking in. Guy was weeping. The direct approach! The courage! You're too loud, Spandex. The team followed. They followed because there was a gravitational pull to confidence that absolute, and because, after 2 months of watching Naruto Uzumaki exist, they were morbidly curious about what happened when you aimed him at a problem and let go. The bandit camp sat in a natural canyon between 2 mountain ridges. Log walls 15 feet high, sharpened stakes at the base, guard towers at 50-meter intervals, and a main gate reinforced with iron bands. Behind the walls, the scouts had estimated 60 armed combatants, many of them former Chunin-level mercenaries with basic ninjutsu capability. Naruto walked toward the front gate in broad daylight. The guards saw him coming from 200 meters out. A single figure on the mountain road, huge, blonde, a sword on his shoulder, walking at a pace that suggested he was headed to a convenience store rather than a military encampment. They called it in. By the time he was 100 meters out, archers lined the wall and 3 ninjutsu users stood on platforms with hand signs already half formed. At 50 meters, someone shouted a warning. Turn back. Last chance. Standard stuff. Naruto kept walking. At 30 meters, they opened fire. Arrows came first. A volley of 20 launched from compound bows with enough force to punch through standard issue armor. Behind them, 3 fire-release jutsu burned through the air in overlapping waves. Explosive tags went off in a chain along the road, fountaining dirt and fire in a wall meant to halt any charge. Naruto walked through it. His ki read every trajectory, every arrow, every jutsu, every explosion. He knew where they were going before the archers released their fingers, and he adjusted. 1 step left, a dip of the shoulder, a half turn that let a jutsu pass close enough to singe the edge of his jacket. He moved through the kill zone the way a river moves through rocks, around everything, touching nothing, arriving on the other side without a scratch and without breaking stride. The guards on the wall stared. Several of them were already reconsidering their career choices. Naruto reached the gate. He looked at it for 1 second. Reinforced iron, 15 feet tall, built to take a battering ram. He drew his katana. The blade came off his shoulder in a single fluid motion, and the moment it cleared his coat, the dark chakra flooded into the metal. Thick, viscous, humming with a bass frequency that made teeth ache. It coated the blade like oil, then went deeper, became the blade, until the katana was a shape cut from absence itself, a line where light ended. Naruto swung once. Dark magic. Dark cloaked Avidya wild slash. Multiple sweeps of dark energy launched from the blade. 5, 10, too many to count in the instant they existed. And they hit the gate, and the gate ceased to exist. The wall sections on either side of the gate ceased to exist. The guard towers flanking the gate separated from their foundations and fell inward, crumbling like sandcastles hit by a wave. And the slashes kept going, through the camp behind the gate, through 3 barracks buildings, through a supply shed, through the far wall, and into the mountain beyond. The mountain split. A line appeared on its face, a new fissure, extending 200 meters up the rock face and releasing a shower of gravel that rained down for 10 full seconds after the technique finished. Silence, then screaming. Bandits poured out of every standing structure, panicked, armed, and running in every direction that was away from the front gate. The ones who ran toward Naruto lasted about 4 seconds each. He walked through the camp the way he had walked down the road, steady, unhurried, the katana back on his shoulder, and anyone who got close enough to swing at him received a single counter, a mercenary with a large axe charged from his right. Naruto's ki had him clocked before the man finished his war cry. 1 step into the swing's range, 1 palm strike to the chest that sent the man airborne for 15 meters, 1 return to walking pace. 3 ninjutsu users tried a combined water release from a fortified position. The jutsu formed, launched, and hit a wall of dark energy that materialized from Naruto's free hand. Dark magic, black hole. And every drop of chakra-infused water spiraled into the vortex and vanished. The 3 casters had about 1 second to register what happened before Naruto was already past them, and the pressure wave from his movement alone knocked them off their feet. It took 4 minutes. The entire camp, 60 combatants, fortified walls, tower defenses, a setup that should have required an hour of careful assault, was done in 4 minutes. Naruto stood in the center of what remained, which was mostly rubble and running men. He sheathed his katana. He lit a fresh cigarette. He looked back toward the canyon entrance where his team was standing. Lee had tears running down his face. His fists were shaking at his sides. His entire body was vibrating with something past excitement, past inspiration. It was a cellular level commitment being forged in real time, watching the most overwhelming display of power he had ever witnessed, delivered with the energy of someone checking their mailbox. Tenten had her notebook out. The page was blank. She had forgotten how to write. Neiji's Byakugan was active, and he was staring at the residual dark energy hanging in the air where the camp used to exist. His expression had cracked, just a fraction, just at the edges, revealing something underneath the composure that might have been awe and might have been terror, and was probably both. Guy was sobbing, full body sobs, streams of tears, fist raised to the sky. The power of youth given form. Naruto looked at Lee. The kid was still shaking, still crying, still staring at him like he had seen God punch a mountain in half. Something shifted behind Naruto's eyes, something ancient and familiar that recognized what it was looking at. The raw material of someone extraordinary. A person with everything to gain and everything to prove and absolutely zero quit in their body. Naruto took the cigarette out of his mouth. He pointed it at Lee. Oi, brows. Lee snapped to attention. Yes, Naruto-kun. You want to be strong without ninjutsu? Stop thinking so hard. Feel their ki. Feel where they are, what they want, where they're going. He said it flat. He said it real. He said it the way you say something you mean with everything you are. Surpass your limits. Right here, right now. Lee's jaw dropped. Then it clenched. Then his entire face restructured around a determination so intense it was almost painful to look at. He fell to his knees. He pressed his forehead to the dirt. I will. I swear on my life, Naruto-kun. I will surpass every limit. I will. Get up, Brows. You're making it weird. Become someone worthy of standing beside you. I will. Seriously. Get up. Train until my body breaks and then train the broken parts. Naruto stared at the sky, blew smoke upward, rubbed the back of his neck. Why is everyone on this team insane? Guy tackled Lee into a hug. Both of them were sobbing. A sunset appeared. It was 1 PM. Tenten finally found her pen. She wrote, "We are going to be the most feared team in Konoha. We might also be the weirdest. Both things are his fault." She was right about everything. The Chunin exams arrived like a storm everyone could see coming, but was powerless to avoid. Team Guy had spent 4 months operating at a level that made other Genin teams actively avoid mission overlap. Word had spread, the way word always spreads in a village full of gossips and bored Chunin, that Team Guy's new member was something else entirely. The stories varied. He could cut buildings in half. He could sense you from a mile away. His chakra was so heavy it made people nauseous. He carried a sword that ate other jutsu. He once threatened the Hokage's life over a bathroom scheduling conflict. Most of these were true. The Hokage one was exaggerated. He had only threatened Hiruzen's aide, and only because the aide had blocked the restroom hallway during a critical moment. The point was, when Team Guy walked into the Chunin exam registration, the room shifted. Conversations dimmed. Eyes tracked. Killing intent from the more aggressive foreign teams probed outward. Testing, measuring, trying to get a read on the new arrivals. Naruto walked through it all without acknowledging a single presence. His ki had already mapped the room. 47 examinees, ranging from fresh genin barely worth noticing to a handful of genuine threats. A red-headed sand ninja with something dark and unstable churning behind his eyes, a sound team with artificially enhanced bodies, and the Konoha Rookie 9 scattered among the crowd with varying levels of readiness. He found a wall. He leaned against it. He lit a cigarette. Lee immediately began doing push-ups. Neji stood with his arms crossed, Byakugan inactive, radiating quiet superiority. Tenten scanned the weapons everyone was carrying with a collector's appraising eye. Sasuke Uchiha was staring. Naruto felt the stare without looking. The Uchiha's key signature was sharp, talented, driven, carrying something wounded underneath the ambition like an open nerve. The kid was strong for his age, upper genin, maybe brushing against Chunin level in raw capability. The Sharingan gave him edges that other fighters had to earn through years of experience. Against Naruto, that edge was a butter knife. Their eyes met across the room. Sasuke's Sharingan was dormant, but his gaze was intense, evaluating, measuring, the way a competitive person looks at someone who might be above them and refuses to accept it without proof. Naruto held the stare for about 2 seconds. Then he looked away, back to his cigarette, back to the ceiling, back to existing in a way that communicated complete indifference to whatever internal crisis the Uchiha was processing. Sasuke's jaw tightened. His hands found his pockets. He filed the information away the way Neji once had, with the same controlled exterior and the same crack forming underneath it. The first exam was written. Naruto slept through it. The proctor, Ibiki Morino, head of torture and interrogation, a man whose scars told stories that would give Anbu nightmares, watched the massive blonde genin put his head down and snore through the entire test. The 10th question came, stay or leave, risk failure or accept it. Naruto raised his head when Ibiki's killing intent filled the room, a teacher's last gambit to break the weak. Naruto looked at Ibiki, blinked once, said, "Are you done?" "I was sleeping." Ibiki met his eyes and found nothing there to intimidate. The scarred Jonin felt, for the first time in years, something uncomfortable crawl up his spine. The recognition that the person looking at him was measuring him as a threat and finding him wanting. Team Guy passed. Every other team who stayed passed. The second exam was announced. The Forest of Death. The trees and training ground. 44 grew tall enough to block the sun. The canopy above was a ceiling of green so thick that noon looked like dusk on the forest floor. Everything in this forest wanted to kill you. The insects were the size of dogs, the snakes were the size of buildings. The plants had opinions about who walked past them. And the other examinees were desperate enough to make all of those things seem like minor inconveniences. Team Guy entered through Gate 12. Neji activated his Byakugan immediately, scanning a 300-meter radius for threats and targets. Tenten unsealed 2 mid-range combat scrolls and held them ready. Lee dropped into his fighting stance, lighter on his feet than he had been 4 months ago. Faster, his center of gravity lower the way Naruto had shown him. Naruto walked into the forest and yawned. His ki filled the space around him without conscious effort, extending outward like sonar, reading every living thing in range, mapping intent and energy and movement. The giant centipedes that called this section home changed direction when they felt his dark chakra. The snakes diverted. A bear-sized spider halfway up a tree trunk went still and stayed still until the team passed. They walked through the forest of death the way civilians walk through a park. "This place is lame," Naruto said, 20 minutes in. The team had their scroll. They needed the matching one. Simple objective. Neji spotted a grass team 300 meters east. Standard genin. Competent, organized, carrying the scroll type they needed. A clean encounter if they moved fast. "I'll handle this," Neji said, and there was an edge to it. A need to contribute something, to prove he was worth his position on a team that had a living weapon sitting on a log behind him. Naruto waved a hand. "Go for it, princess." Neji went. He took the grass team apart in 90 seconds flat. Gentle fist, efficient and brutal the way it was designed to be. He returned with the scroll and a thin satisfaction behind his mask. "Good," Naruto said, and he meant it. And Neji felt it and hated that he cared. They had both scrolls within the first hour. They were headed for the tower, ahead of schedule, untouched, barely warmed up. Then the key shifted. Naruto was mid-step when it hit. A wave of intent, cold, ancient, malicious in a way that went past killing intent and into something older, something that existed before hidden villages, before chakra systems, before the concept of fair fights. It washed over the forest like a tide of ice water, and everything alive in its radius went still. The insects stopped. The birds stopped. The trees themselves seemed to hold their breath. Neji's Byakugan flared. He felt it too, the wrongness pressing against his skin. Lee's stance shifted into full alert, his usual enthusiasm gone, replaced by the survival instinct of someone whose body recognized a predator. Tenten's hands were white-knuckled on her scrolls. Naruto stopped walking. He stood still. He read the key. He followed it to its source, southwest, about 600 meters, a presence wrapped in fake skin that was unraveling under its own appetites. There were 3 smaller presences near it, young, frightened, outmatched. One of them was the Uchiha kid. One was radiating panic. One was barely conscious. Naruto blew smoke through his nose. He turned toward the source. "Where are you going?" Neji asked, and the steadiness in his voice was held together with effort. "Something ugly is happening that way," Naruto said. He started walking southwest. "Take the scrolls to the tower. I'll catch up." "Naruto-kun," Lee started. "Tower. Now." His voice left zero room for debate. It was the first time his team had heard him give an order that sounded like one. The dark chakra was rising off him in visible waves. Black mist curling up from his shoulders, like his arms, the edge of his blade. The air around him gained weight. He walked into the forest. The trees moved aside. Branches pulled back. A tiger 20 meters away fled with a sound that was almost a whimper. The forest itself was making a path for what was coming through it. Orochimaru was having fun. The Sannin, traitor, genius, monster wearing a dead person's face, had found his target. Sasuke Uchiha lay against the base of a tree, half conscious, the curse mark already beginning its work on his body. The seal was settling into his neck like a brand, pumping foreign chakra into his system with every heartbeat. Pain was rewriting his consciousness. He would wake up changed. He would wake up hungry. Sakura was standing between them, shaking, armed with a kunai she held like a talisman, tears streaming down her face. Her courage the only thing between Orochimaru and finishing what he had started. Orochimaru found this adorable. The snake-like face stretched into a smile that had too many teeth and too little humanity behind it. His tongue, obscenely long, wet, inhuman, slid across his lips. "Such devotion," he said. His voice was honey poured over something rotten. Truly touching. "But little girl, your usefulness here is..." His tongue stopped. His sentence stopped. Everything stopped. Because a hand, Massive, calloused grip strength that could crush stone closed around his extended neck from behind. One grab, full stop, like snatching something from the air. Orochimaru's eyes went wide. His body jerked. Instinct, surprise, the first time in decades something had gotten close to him without his express permission. His ki sense was supposed to be non-existent. He was a snake, all intent, giving off malice without receiving it back. And yet someone was standing behind him, holding his neck like a leash, with an aura pressing down on his shoulders like the sky had lowered itself 6 feet. "You're creeping me out, snake freak." The voice was flat, bored, and carrying underneath the boredom, something that made Orochimaru's research-obsessed mind fire on every cylinder simultaneously. Naruto Uzumaki stood behind the Sannin with one hand on his neck and the other resting on his katana. The dark chakra was visible now, curling off him like smoke from a fire that burned in a color the world had never made before. His eyes were flat blue. His cigarette was gone. He had stubbed it out on the walkover because fighting with the smoke was wasteful and Asuma's brand was expensive. Orochimaru recovered fast. He always did. 1,000 battles, 1,000 close calls, 1,000 moments where surprise should have killed him and his genius carried him through. He drove the Kusanagi sword, the legendary blade, the grass cutter, one of the most storied weapons in the shinobi world, directly at Naruto's chest in a stabbing motion powered by his full body rotation. Naruto drew his katana. The blades met in the space between heartbeats and the sound was wrong. Metal on metal should ring. This didn't ring. It thumped, a dense, heavy impact like the air itself was being compressed between two immovable forces. The dark chakra on Naruto's blade made contact with the chakra threaded through the Kusanagi, and it started eating. Orochimaru felt it. The energy he channeled through his legendary weapon was being consumed, drawn out, absorbed, erased, like holding a torch against a black hole. His eyes shifted from surprise to fascination. That expression he wore, the flat reptilian certainty, changed. The corners of his mouth twitched upward. My, what a fascinating energy. Shut up. Naruto pressed forward. His free hand came up, palm facing the Sannin, and darkness gathered there, spinning, compressing, pulling inward like a drain in reality. Dark magic black hole. The vortex opened 6 feet in diameter, centered on Naruto's palm, pulling everything chakra-based in its radius toward its center. The wind released traps Orochimaru had seeded through the clearing. Contingency jutsu, insurance, the kind of layered preparation that kept Sannin alive through decades of war, activated and were immediately pulled off course. The fire release backup fired and spiraled into the void. 3 explosive tag arrays detonated prematurely and their force was consumed before the shockwave could form. Every trap, every backup, every insurance policy, gone, eaten. Erased. Orochimaru's smile slipped. Just a fraction, just enough. Naruto closed the distance in 1 step. Not a blur, not a flicker, just a single stride that covered ground it shouldn't have covered, and delivered a front kick to Orochimaru's chest. His full mass, his full strength, dark chakra flooding through his leg at the point of impact. The sound was sickening. Ribs broke, plural. The body of Orochimaru folded around the point of impact like paper around a fist, and then the body was airborne. 1 tree, 2 trees, 3 trees, each one splitting at the trunk as the Sannin's body passed through them. The 4th tree stopped his momentum. The bark exploded inward around the impact crater of a human body hitting wood at speeds usually reserved for thrown kunai. Dust rose. Wood chips rained down. The clearing was silent except for the settling debris. Naruto looked at the tree line where Orochimaru had disappeared. His ki could feel the Sannin, alive of course, because that thing was unkillable, but rattled, genuinely rattled. The kind of rattle that came from encountering something that existed outside your calculation matrix. "Ruin my nap again," Naruto said loud enough for it to carry, "and I'll cut you into sushi." He turned his back on the tree line. The dismissal was complete. He walked back toward his resting spot, wherever his team was, wherever his log was, wherever he could close his eyes and stop dealing with the universe's insistence on interrupting his schedule. As he passed the base of the large tree, he stopped. Sakura was still standing there, kunai raised, face wet, eyes so wide they looked like they might fall out of her head. She was staring at him, at the destroyed tree line, at him again. Her brain was attempting to process what she had just witnessed and was having about as much success as a calculator asked to divide by 0. Naruto looked at her. He said, "Your boyfriend is going to be fine. Don't let him do anything stupid when he wakes up." He walked past her. Sasuke was slumped against his tree, the curse mark on his neck pulsed. His eyes were closed. But in the brief moment before Naruto had arrived, in those seconds where Orochimaru had been close enough to touch, where death had been a very real possibility, Sasuke had been conscious enough to see, not everything, but enough. He had seen a boy his age grab a Sannin by the neck and call him a creep. He had seen the Kusanagi, the sword his brother feared, stopped by a black blade held by someone who had to shave maybe once a week. He had seen Orochimaru, the thing that had dismantled his entire team in seconds, the nightmare that Sasuke's own Sharingan had been helpless against, get kicked through 3 trees by a single blow delivered with less effort than most people use to open a door. That image would burn into his memory. It would sit there, smoldering, through the curse marks integration, through the preliminaries, through the month of training before the finals, through every conversation Orochimaru's agents would have with him about power and ambition, and what you had to sacrifice to become strong enough. The image of someone already being that strong. Already. Without sacrifice. Without selling anything. Without the darkness, Sasuke was being sold as the only path forward. That image would crack something in Sasuke Uchiha that would either save him or destroy him. Team Guy reached the tower with time to spare. Naruto arrived 20 minutes after his team, smelling faintly of wood smoke and looking like he had taken a light walk rather than a fight with an S-rank missing nin. "Where were you?" Tenten asked. "Some snake freak was messing with people. I handled it." "You handled it?" "Yeah," Tenten added to her notebook. "Fought an S-rank criminal. Walked back." His only complaint was the nap interruption. The preliminary rounds were announced. Too many teams had passed. The field needed to be cut. Random matchups, one-on-one fights, winner advances. The screen randomized. It landed. Naruto Uzumaki versus Neji Hyuga. The arena floor of the Forest of Death's tower was concrete and dim, ringed by railings, where the remaining Genin and their Jonin instructors watched from above. The proctor, Hayate Gecko, the perpetually coughing special Jonin, stood between the two fighters and tried very hard to project authority over a situation he was increasingly certain was above his pay grade. Neji dropped into his fighting stance. Byakugan active. Veins prominent around his temples, chakra system on full display, 64 strike points mapped and ready. His face was a mask, composure, confidence, the absolute certainty of a prodigy who had been told since birth that his talent was the only relevant factor in any outcome. Naruto stood with his hands in his pockets. No stance, no guard. The proctor had ruled his katana prohibited. Lethal weapons were restricted in the prelims. Naruto had been given a wooden bakken as a compromise. It hung from his belt, undrawn. The watching crowd was divided. Those who knew Neji expected a clinical dismantling. The Hyuga prodigy, the genius of his generation, the boy who had never lost a spar in his life, against a dropout who failed the academy twice and was a year behind his cohort. Those who knew Naruto, and by now, Guy's team had earned a reputation, were sitting forward. Lee was gripping the railing hard enough to leave finger-shaped dents in the metal. Tenten had her notebook ready. Guy was standing perfectly still, which was somehow more unnerving than his usual state. Kakashi Hatake leaned against the far wall with his book closed. He had heard reports. He wanted to see. Hiruzen Sarutobi sat in the observation box with his pipe between his teeth and his eyes sharp. The old Hokage had been watching Naruto Uzumaki since birth. He had seen the dark chakra manifest at age 8. He had read the reports about the Anbu retirements. He had signed the team placement personally. He wanted to see what his gamble had produced. "Begin!" Hayate announced and immediately coughed. Neji moved. He was fast, genuinely fast, his footwork a product of a decade of dedicated training under the most exacting martial system in the elemental nations. He closed the distance in 3 steps and launched the opening sequence of the 8 trigram 64 palms. The supreme technique, the ultimate expression of the gentle fist. 64 targeted strikes to 64 tenketsu points, designed to shut down a chakra system completely and irrevocably. 2 palms. His fingers hit Naruto's chest. The strikes landed, both of them. 4 palms, 2 more, landed, precise, targeted. 8 palms, faster, more, every hit finding its mark against a body that was standing still and accepting the strikes without flinching. Neji's confidence surged. This was it. This was the technique working as designed. The dropout was too arrogant to dodge and was paying the price. 16 palms, 32 palms, 64 palms. The final strikes landed. Neji's hands blurred through the sequence and delivered the full combination. Every hit perfect, every tenketsu targeted, every point struck with the chakra-disrupting force that defined the Hyuga's ultimate combat art. He stepped back, breathing hard, hands tingling from the rapid-fire sequence. Byakugan reading the result, his eyes widened. The tenketsu were still open, every single one of them. The dark energy inside Naruto's system was sitting in those points like lead in a pipe. Too dense, too heavy, too fundamentally different from normal chakra for the gentle fist disruption to gain any purchase. Neji had delivered the most devastating technique in his arsenal. Perfectly, completely, every strike landed, and achieved nothing. Naruto looked down at his own body where Neji had hit him. He looked at Neji. His expression carried something that was almost pity. But it was wrapped in so much boredom that the pity was more insulting than malice would have been. "You think poking me is going to do anything?" Naruto said. The crowd was silent. Those who understood what had just happened, the Jonin, the examiners, the Hokage, were staring. The 64 palms had failed. The supreme technique of the Hyuga clan, the art that defined their combat superiority, the system that had never been overcome through frontal resistance, had been tanked. Absorbed, ignored, Neji's composure cracked. Just slightly, just at the edges. His hands were still raised in their striking position, trembling faintly from exertion, from the first stirrings of something he had never felt in combat. "Destiny," Naruto said. He pulled the bakken from his belt. It was a simple wooden training sword, smooth, plain, the kind they gave to academy children for practice swings. In his massive hand, it looked like a toy. Sounds like an excuse for guys who are too scared to put in the work. Neji's jaw clenched. His pride, already hemorrhaging, already under assault from the sheer impossibility of what he was seeing, made the decision for him. He launched into the 8 trigrams rotation, spinning, chakra pouring from every point in his body to form the absolute defense. The spinning dome of force that deflected everything, stopped everything, was the ceiling of the Hyuga's defensive capability. The rotation formed, perfect, dense, the spinning chakra creating a barrier that had stopped weapons, jutsu, and full-grown jonin in their tracks. Naruto coated the bakken in dark chakra. The wooden sword vanished under a sheath of black energy so heavy that the air around it bent. The floor beneath his feet cracked from the gravitational pressure of what he was holding. He swung. The bakken hit the rotation, and the dark energy's mass met the spinning chakra's speed, and mass won. It won because it was always going to win, because the rotation deflected force by redirecting it, but you couldn't redirect something that absorbed the energy meant to push it away. The dark chakra ate the rotational force at the point of contact, created an opening, and the bakken carried through. It hit Neji in the ribs. The Hyuga prodigy left the ground. He went up, the angle of the blow catching him low and launching him at a 45-degree trajectory that carried him over the arena railing, into the upper balcony, and against the wall with a sound that echoed through the tower. He hit the wall. He slid down it. He did not get back up. Silence. Total, absolute silence. The kind of silence that happens when a room full of trained killers all simultaneously realize they have witnessed something they have never seen before and may never see again. Naruto stood in the center of the arena with the bakken resting on his shoulder. He looked up at the crowd. Every eye was on him. Every single one. Jonin, Genin, the Hokage, the examiners, everyone. He said, "I need to take a dump." He walked off the arena floor before Hayate could raise his hand to call the match. The proctor watched him go, coughed twice, and said, "Winner, Naruto Uzumaki," to a room that already knew. The reactions hit like a chain of explosions. Lee collapsed against the railing, openly weeping, fists pounding the metal. Naruto-kun has surpassed all limits. The rotation itself was nothing. The 64 palms were meaningless. His power is... He couldn't finish. He was too overwhelmed, Guy was beside him also weeping, and they were holding each other and sobbing, and the sunset was back and nobody could explain it. Tintin had dropped her notebook. It lay on the ground, open to a page that said only. He broke the rotation with a wooden stick. Kakashi Hatake's visible eye was wide. His book was forgotten in his hand. He was running calculations, threat assessment, capability analysis, every metric he used to evaluate combat potential. And every single one came back with the same answer. An answer that should have been impossible for a 13-year-old genin. An answer that put the kid in a category where the other members were all Kage level or above. Hiruzen leaned forward in his observation chair. His pipe had gone out. He was smiling, a small private expression that carried weight measured in decades of experience. The old man had seen S-rank fighters born. He had trained them. He had fought beside them and against them. He knew what the early signs looked like. This was more than early signs. This was a finished product walking around in a teenager's body with a pack of cigarettes and zero patience for social norms. On the arena floor, Hayate was examining the point where the Bakken had hit the rotation's barrier. The concrete was cracked in a spiderweb pattern 10 feet wide. The air still felt heavy. Residual dark energy clung to the stone like morning fog, slowly dispersing. In the upper balcony, medical nin were attending to Neji. He was conscious, barely. His eyes were open, his Byakugan was deactivated, and he was staring at the ceiling with an expression that was simultaneously blank and devastating. The absolute defense, the supreme technique, destiny itself, the fate that separated the talented from the mediocre, that kept the ceiling above the heads of everyone who dared to dream. A boy with a wooden stick had walked through everything. Neji was in a single swing. Neji closed his eyes. Something was breaking inside him. Something that had been built over years of pain and resentment and the seal burning on his forehead every time he forgot his place. Something that had told him the world was fixed and nothing changed and the cage was permanent. That something was crumbling. And underneath it, uncertain, raw, uncomfortable as a new wound, was the first foundation of something else. The finals were set. 1 month of preparation. The village buzzed with the matchups. But underneath the civilian excitement and the gambling pools and the visiting dignitaries, the shinobi population of Konoha was buzzing about one thing only, the Uzumaki kid. Rumors were already spinning. What he did to Neji, what he did in the forest, that story had leaked within 48 hours. What his chakra felt like, what his sword did, what those dark attacks were. The theories ranged from wild to insane. He was a secret Uchiha experiment. He was a demon in human skin. He was a weapon the Hokage had been developing in secret. He was the fourth legacy given combat form. The truth was simpler and stranger than all of them. He was just himself, a soul heavy enough to bend the world around it, wearing the skin of an orphan who never asked for any of it and would have preferred to be left alone with a bathroom and a pack of smokes. The month passed. Naruto trained, alone, because that was how he always trained, and because Guy's regime was fine for endurance, but couldn't push his combat abilities any further. He went deep into the forests outside Konoha and swung his blade until trees fell and mountains gained new scars, and his dark chakra responded to his will with a density that made the earth groan. He pushed the black hole wider. He pushed the dimension slash further. He refined the Avijja techniques until they were second nature, thought to execution in less time than a heartbeat. And he sat in silence and extended his ki until he could feel every living thing within a kilometer, their heartbeats, their intentions, the flow of their lives like a river he was standing above. He got stronger. The ceiling everyone else was pressing against didn't exist for him. The finals arrived. The stadium was packed. Dignitaries, daimyo, civilians, shinobi from every village. The arena floor stretched out below the stands like a battle pit, and the energy of the crowd was electric with anticipation. Naruto walked into the arena with his team. He was wearing his standard outfit, open jacket over a black undershirt, his katana on his shoulder now that the lethal weapons restriction had been lifted for the finals, a cigarette between his teeth, his blonde hair a mess, his blue eyes scanning the crowd with a flat indifference that somehow made the people who caught his gaze look away first. His match was third. He leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. The first 2 fights happened. They were fine. Competent genin doing competent genin things. The crowd cheered. Naruto slept. Then his name was called. He opened his eyes. He walked to the center of the arena. The crowd noise dimmed as his dark aura spread across the floor. A subtle pressure, a weight in the air, something that made the civilians closest to the arena rails lean back without knowing why. His opponent was a sound genin. Dosu Kinuta, the one with the arm-mounted device, a resonating weapon that used sound waves to disrupt equilibrium, induce nausea, and damage the inner ear. A nasty tool for a nasty fighter. The sound team had been built by Orochimaru to disrupt, to probe, to gather information. Dosu stood across the arena with his single visible eye locked on Naruto. He had done his research. He had watched the preliminaries. He knew what the blonde had done to Neji. He was nervous, a fact his body language was working very hard to conceal and failing at. Naruto read his ki inside. This fight was already over. The sound genin knew it too, somewhere underneath the pride. His body was tight with the resignation of someone walking into something they cannot escape. Begin! The proctor called. Dosu activated his resonance device and charged, a sprint meant to close distance and deliver the disorienting sound waves at point-blank range. His arm came forward, the mechanism humming with stored energy, the air around it vibrating with a frequency designed to shut down the inner ear and drop even hardened fighters to their knees. Naruto drew his katana. Dark magic, dark cloaked EI slash. The quick draw, the blade came off his shoulder, dark chakra flooding into the steel, and the slash launched in the same motion. A single arc of absolute darkness that crossed the arena floor in less time than the eye could track. It hit the space Dosu was running through, and the sound genin's resonance device, arm mount, mechanism and all, separated from his arm in a clean line. The device clattered to the ground. Dosu's arm was still attached. The cut had been placed with such precision that only the weapon was severed, the dark energy slicing through the mechanism's bindings and the metal framework without touching skin. Dosu stumbled, stopped, looked at his bare arm where the weapon used to be, looked at the pieces on the ground, looked at Naruto. Naruto was already sheathing his blade. "We done?" Naruto said. Dosu stood for 3 seconds. His single eye was wide. His chest was heaving. Every instinct in his body was screaming information at him. Information about what stood across the arena from him, about the gulf between their capabilities, about the objective mathematical certainty that continuing this fight would end with him in a hospital or a grave. He raised his hand. "I forfeit," the proctor called it. The crowd exploded, some cheering, some confused, some making noises that were just pure reaction to what they had witnessed. A single slash, a weapon destroyed without damaging the wielder. The entire fight had lasted 4 seconds. In the Kage box, Hiruzen puffed his pipe. Beside him, the Kazekage Orochimaru in disguise, though only one of them knew that at the moment, sat very still. His fake eyes behind the fake veil were fixed on the blonde genin walking off the arena floor. "What an interesting student you've cultivated, Hokage Dono," the Kazekage said, and something in his tone carried the particular hunger of a collector who has just seen something he wants on someone else's shelf. Hiruzen said nothing. His pipe puffed. His eyes tracked Naruto back to his team, where Lee was screaming and Guy was crying, and Tenten was furiously updating her notebook. The Hokage's silence was its own statement. The remaining matches played out. Other genin fought, won, lost, bled. The crowd was entertained. But the energy in the stadium had shifted after Naruto's fight. An undercurrent, a whisper that ran through the rows of spectators like electricity through water. Something was coming. Something had already arrived. The afternoon felt charged with potential energy, like the sky before a storm breaks. Then the storm broke. It started with a feather, a genjutsu, subtle and layered, casting sleep across the civilian population in waves. Naruto felt it the moment it activated, his ki recognizing the foreign intent before the illusion had finished forming. It washed over him and did nothing. His dark chakra was too dense, too present, too actively flowing for an external influence to take root. He stood up. Around the arena, chaos erupted. Sand ninja dropped their disguises and attacked. Sound ninja emerged from hiding positions in the crowd. The barrier division activated a massive purple shield around the Kage box. trapping the Hokage inside with the Kazekage, whose face was already melting into something pale and reptilian and familiar. Naruto felt the Sanin's ki flare inside the barrier, malicious, ancient, hungry. He felt the old man's ki rise to meet it. Hiruzen Sarutobi, god of shinobi, burning with a lifetime's worth of resolved intent. Two monsters fighting in a cage. That wasn't his problem. The old man could handle himself. The real problem was the wave of killing intent that just washed over the stadium from the north, massive, inhuman, carrying the weight and density of a natural disaster given consciousness. Naruto's ki locked onto it instantly. The One Tail, the sand kid from the exams Gaara, was losing his mind somewhere at the edge of the village, and the thing inside him was clawing its way out through the crack in his sanity. Sand was rising. A shape was forming. Something enormous and wrong and laughing in a voice that shook buildings off their foundations. Naruto looked toward the north. He sighed. A long, slow sigh that carried the weight of interrupted plans. He had been in the bathroom. He had been in a bathroom stall with a newspaper in the brief gap between his match and the chaos. He had been sitting. He had been at peace. The ceiling had shaken. Dust had fallen on his newspaper. He had looked up at the dust. He had looked back at his newspaper. More shaking, more dust. His grip had crumpled the edge of the paper. Now he was standing on the arena roof, the dark aura pouring off him in waves heavy enough to crack the tiles beneath his feet. His jaw was clenched. A vein stood out on his forehead. He was staring at the rapidly forming shape of the one-tailed Shukaku, 40 meters tall and growing, sand pouring off it like water, its laughter cracking windows in the nearest residential district. I was in the middle of something important, you overgrown raccoon. His voice carried across the battlefield. Every fighter within 300 meters, Konoha, sand, sound, paused. They paused because the voice carried an authority that short-circuited rational thought. They paused because the dark chakra that erupted from the figure on the roof was denser than anything they had ever felt, and their bodies made decisions for them. Naruto drew his katana. The blade came off his shoulder and the dark energy flooded in. All of it. Every reserve, every drop of that dense, viscous power compressed into the edge of the sword. It coated the steel. It went past the steel. The blade became a shape cut from reality itself, a line where the world stopped existing and something else began. The air bent around it. Light bent around it. The roof tiles in a 5-meter radius cracked from the gravitational pressure alone. Naruto extended his ki. He found the center of Shukaku's formation, the dense core where Gaara's consciousness was sinking into the beast's madness, the eye of the chakra storm powering the transformation. He locked onto it. He raised the blade. The dark energy condensed, compressed, got denser, got heavier. The sword stopped humming and started pulling, a bass vibration that was felt in chests rather than heard with ears. The fighters nearest to Naruto backed away on instinct. The air itself seemed to lean toward the blade. He swung down. Dark magic, dark cloak dimension slash. A line of absolute darkness left the blade. Thin, barely wider than the sword that birthed it, moving at a speed that made tracking it impossible. It was here, then it was there, then it was at the target, with nothing in between to suggest travel time. It crossed the distance between the arena roof and Shukaku's massive form in the time between one heartbeat and the next. It hit. The slash entered Shukaku's right shoulder and exited through the construct's midsection. A diagonal line of absence cut through the sand, through the chakra, through the raw physical mass of a tailed beast transformation, matter that should have been immune to conventional attacks, dense enough to stop any jutsu, backed by the power of an ancient demon. The dimension slash didn't care. It cut. And behind the cut, in the wake of the darkness, space itself was thin. The dimension had been sliced, and the sand that should have reformed couldn't reform because there was nothing left for it to reform on. The chakra that should have held the construct together was severed at a level deeper than physical. Shukaku's right side came apart. The arm, the shoulder, a massive portion of the torso, all of it dispersed into sand and wind, falling away from the construct like an avalanche in reverse. The tailed beast's laughter stopped mid-howl. What replaced it was a sound no one in the village had ever heard before, the confused, pained shriek of something that had believed itself invincible and was just taught otherwise. Gaara's body fell from the collapsing construct. The connection broke. The sand couldn't hold him without the chakra structure he'd been riding, and he hit the ground from 20 meters up, impacting the dirt with a dull sound that was final in a way the falling sand was temporary. He didn't get up. The battlefield went still. Every fight within line of sight paused. Combatants on both sides frozen by what had just happened, by the aftermath they could see, and the implications they were still processing. The Shukaku, a tailed beast, a force of nature, one of the 9 most powerful entities on the planet, had been cut apart by a single swing from a genin standing on a rooftop. The sand ninjas looked at Shukaku's remains. They looked at the figure on the roof. They looked at each other, one by one, some fast, some slow, some with more dignity than others. They began retreating. The invasion's centerpiece was lying in a crater, unconscious, and the thing that had put it there was still standing with his sword out. The math was simple. The conclusion was unanimous. Sound followed shortly after. Orochimaru's forces had been the second wave, reliant on Shukaku's rampage to provide the chaos they needed to operate. Without that chaos, they were exposed, outnumbered, and suddenly very aware that the village they were attacking had a weapon that cut tailed beasts. On the Kagabak's rooftop, behind the purple barrier, Hiruzen and Orochimaru still fought. The old monkey summoning and the snake summoning clashing, jutsu flying, the battle of student and teacher raging with decades of betrayal as fuel. But even Orochimaru, even him, with his infinite schemes and his immortality obsession and his inability to let anything go, paused when the dimension slash hit Shukaku. He felt it. Through the barrier, across the distance, through every sense he had natural and unnatural, he felt the dimension crack. His smile, the one that carried his contempt for everything mortal and limited, flickered. The boy was 13, and he had just crippled a tailed beast with one attack. Orochimaru's plan shifted in real time. The invasion was failing. The Shukaku was gone. His sound forces were retreating. The barrier would fall eventually, and Konoha's response would be overwhelming. He needed to leave, but he filed the information away. He filed the Uzumaki boy away in the same category he kept his most prized specimens, the things he would return for, the things he wanted to understand, the things he would never, under any circumstances, allow himself to forget about. He retreated, through the corpses of the Sound Four who maintained the barrier, through an escape route he had prepared weeks in advance, into the earth and away. The invasion ended with a whimper where it had started with a roar. On the arena roof, Naruto sheathed his katana. He lit a cigarette. His hands were steady. His breathing was even. His heart rate hadn't changed. He looked down at the village. The damage, the fires, the scattered bodies, the fighters still mopping up the last of the invading forces. He took a drag. Shh, what a pain. He went to find a working bathroom. Below him, in every direction, from every angle, the reactions were a cascading wave. Kakashi stood on a building edge with his headband raised, Sharingan exposed, and he was staring at the space where the dimension slash had cut through the air. The faint residual shimmer where reality had been opened and closed in the same instant. His single visible eye was wide. His hands were loose at his sides. For the first time in a very long time, Hatake Kakashi was out of answers. Asuma leaned against a wall with a fresh cigarette and a look that said he was personally offended that a 13-year-old was cooler than him. "That's the kid who stole my smokes," he said to nobody. "That kid." Kurenai beside him was pale. "That was, She didn't finish. Guy stood on the arena floor below, looking up at where Naruto had been standing. The green beast was crying, but this was different from his usual passionate weeping. These were the quiet tears, the ones that came from recognizing something in someone else that transcended normal understanding. "Naruto," he whispered, "my student." Lee was beside him, and Lee was vibrating. His entire body was shaking with the force of what he had just witnessed. His inspiration, his goal-given form, and the sound that came out of his mouth was past words. It was pure, overwhelming emotion, compressed into a single syllable that might have been wow and might have been a prayer. Tenten had snapped her pencil. She was holding two halves of a writing instrument and staring at the sky. I'm on a team with that person, she said. I go on missions with that person. I eat lunch with that person. Neji, recovered from the prelims, standing with his arms crossed and his Byakugan active, watching the dark energy residue dissipate from the space where Shukaku had been, said nothing. But his eyes, behind the veins and the power of his bloodline, held something that had taken root in the crater of his former worldview. If destiny was real, what destiny had produced that? The aftermath of the invasion was Konoha at its most chaotic and its most resolute. Buildings were damaged. People were hurt. The village had been tested, violated by the one person it should have been safest from. One of its own legends turned against it. But the village stood. And in the whispered conversations that ran through the reconstruction, in the bars where Jonin drank too much after shifts, in the mission room where assignments were processed, in the academy where instructors taught the next generation, one name circulated more than any other: Uzumaki. Hiruzen sat behind his desk 2 days after the invasion, pipe lit, shadows under his eyes that spoke of a man running on duty alone. Across from him, the team placement file for Team Guy sat open, updated with after-action reports and capability assessments that read more like warnings than evaluations. The old man puffed his pipe and said nothing for a very long time. 3 weeks after the invasion, the village was rebuilding. Missions were running again. Teams were deployed on the increased workload that came from a military that needed to prove to itself and to clients that the hidden leaf was unbroken. Sasuke Uchiha was deteriorating. The curse mark burned. Every day, every hour, a whisper that was more than a whisper. A pull, a promise, a map drawn in pain that pointed away from Konoha and toward something dark and waiting. Orochimaru's legacy sat on his neck like a brand, and it worked the way it was designed to work. Slowly, inevitably, eating at the foundations of loyalty and replacing them with hunger. But underneath the curse mark's influence, underneath the snake's programming, the chemical manipulation of ambition and insecurity, was something else. An image, a memory. A blonde genin kicking Orochimaru through 3 trees with less effort than most people used to throw a punch. Power. Real power. Power that existed without sacrifice, without selling your soul, without crawling on your belly to a monster who wore human skin like a coat. The image tortured Sasuke almost more than the mark did. Because if that kind of strength existed, if someone his age could achieve it through training and will alone, then what was the point of what Orochimaru was offering? What was the point of the curse mark? What was the point of leaving? But the mark was designed by a genius of manipulation, and it whispered louder than memories, and it found the crack it needed, the one that was already there, the one Itachi had put there years ago with a single sentence. "You are weak." Sasuke left on a Friday night. The retrieval team was assembled in hours. Shikamaru Nara, fresh Chunin, tactical genius, carrying the weight of command for the first time and hating every second of it, led a squad of genin on a mission that was already above their pay grade. They hit the Sound Four and it went wrong immediately. The Sound Four were Jonin-level opponents in bodies enhanced by curse mark transformations. Sakan, Ukon, Kidomaru, Tayuya, Jirobo. Each one was a nightmare tailored to exploit genin-level weaknesses. The retrieval squad fought. They fought hard and they fought well, but the gap was real and the casualties were mounting and the mission was failing. Naruto was deployed separately. Guy had come to him, serious for once, the usual fire damped down to embers. He told Naruto about Sasuke, about the retrieval team, about the Sound Four, about the direction they were headed and the gap between what had been sent and what was needed. Naruto listened. He lit a cigarette. He looked at the sky. "The Uchiha brat, huh?" "Naruto, I know he is your comrade in Konoha. I know. He's a kid making a stupid decision." Naruto stood. The katana settled on his shoulder like it was coming home. "I'll bring him back." He left. He moved fast, faster than his usual pace, which was already alarming. The dark chakra curled around him like a cloak, pushing air aside, and the forest he traveled through became a blur of green and brown that he carved through in a straight line. He passed the retrieval team's trail. He felt their key signatures scattered along the route, fighting, struggling, holding the line against opponents that were tearing them apart. He marked each one in his mind. They were alive. They would survive. The Sound Four were winning, but they weren't finishing. They were stalling, creating distance, buying time for the package to reach its destination. Naruto made a decision and kept going. The package, Sasuke, was the objective. End the flight and the pursuit ended too. He covered ground that should have taken hours and minutes. His ki tracked Sasuke's signature ahead. The Uchiha was unconscious, sealed in a barrel, being carried by the remaining Sound Ninja at maximum speed toward the land of sound. But Naruto was faster and closer with every second. The Sound Four felt him coming. Of course they did. You couldn't miss the pressure of Naruto's approach any more than you could miss a thunderstorm bearing down. The one carrying Sasuke's barrel, Kimimaro Kaguya, the final guardian, bone user, the one opponent Orochimaru considered genuinely valuable, felt the approach and increased speed. He wasn't fast enough. The Valley of the End. Two massive stone statues, Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha, flanking a waterfall that poured into a basin below. The most symbolic location in the Land of Fire. The place where the first betrayal happened, where friend became enemy, where the history of the shinobi world cracked in half and never healed. Kimimaro lay unconscious at the valley's entrance. Naruto had reached him 4 miles back and settled the matter in 6 seconds. Dark-cloaked Ai slashed through his primary bone constructs, a palm strike to the temple, and the bone user was done without a full conversation being exchanged. Sasuke stood at the top of the Madara statue. The barrel had broken during the transport. The curse-marked second stage had activated, flooding Sasuke's body with power that shattered the containment seal from the inside. He stood in his transformed state, gray skin, black markings running like ink across his body, hand wings spread from his shoulder blades, purple lightning crackling around his fists. His Sharingan was fully mature, 3 tomoe spinning in red eyes that carried something broken behind the power. He looked powerful. He looked nightmarish. He looked like a boy wearing a monster costume and pretending the costume made him something he wasn't. Naruto stood at the water's edge below, katana on his shoulder, smoke curling from a cigarette in the rain that had started falling. Light at first, then heavier, until the valley was a curtain of gray between them. They looked at each other across the space where legends had fought before them. "So," Naruto said, "this is where you ran to." Sasuke's wings flexed. The purple lightning intensified. "Get out of my way, Uzumaki." "No, this is my choice, my path. You can't understand what I need, the power to kill him, the darkness required to." "Darkness!" Naruto took the cigarette from his mouth. He let it fall. It hissed out in the rain. "You think coloring your skin gray and growing ugly hand wings makes you dark? You're just a brat throwing a tantrum." Sasuke's Sharingan spun faster. Rage, pure, humiliated, desperate, flared across his features. "You don't know anything about what I've been through. You don't know. I know you're standing on top of another man's statue wearing another man's power and calling it your own." Naruto's voice was flat, cold, carrying an authority that came from a place Sasuke couldn't reach and couldn't fake. "That's weak, Uchiha. That's the weakest thing I've ever seen." Sasuke screamed. He dove from the statue. The Chidori formed in his hand. Black fed through the curse mark until the lightning was wrong, corrupted, carrying killing intent sharp enough to cut the air itself. The sound of 1,000 birds became the sound of 1,000 dying birds. The technique twisted into something it was never meant to be. He drove it toward Naruto's chest with everything he had: speed, power, rage, the accumulated weight of every moment that had led him here. He wanted it to end. He wanted to drive through Naruto and keep going and never look back. He wanted the impact to validate everything: the curse mark, the betrayal, the leaving, the choice. If he could punch through this one obstacle, everything else would make sense. Naruto didn't move. He raised his free hand, palm open, fingers spread, and the dark chakra flooded from his body into the space in front of his palm, spinning, compressing, pulling inward, forming a vortex that anchored itself to the air and began to pull. Dark magic, black hole. The Chidori hit the vortex, the black lightning, corrupted, amplified, carrying every ounce of Sasuke's enhanced power, entered the black hole and was consumed. Every volt of it, every bit of chakra, every fragment of killing intent. The vortex ate the Chidori the way a river swallows a raindrop, completely, instantly, with absolute indifference to what was being consumed. Sasuke's arm went through empty space. His fist passed through the vortex's edge and came out the other side holding nothing. The energy was gone. The lightning was gone. The killing intent was gone. His momentum carried him forward into a position that was purely vulnerable, purely exposed, purely at Naruto's mercy. Naruto's free hand closed around Sasuke's throat. The grip was iron, absolute. The kind of hold that communicated to every cell in Sasuke's body that struggling was a waste of energy. His transformation, the gray skin, the wings, the markings, flickered under the contact. The curse mark's power destabilized by the dark energy flowing from Naruto's palm directly into Sasuke's chakra system. Naruto lifted him, one hand on his throat, feet off the ground, rain falling on both of them. He held Sasuke up like something he was examining and finding disappointing. "Look at me." Sasuke's Sharingan was spinning wildly. Panic, rage, confusion, the desperate search for something to copy, something to counter, something to do against a force that had just eaten his strongest attack like it was nothing. "Look at me, Uchiha." Their eyes met, rain streaking down both faces. Naruto's expression was carrying something that was almost unreadable. It looked like anger from a distance, but up close, from inches away, held by the throat with his feet dangling in the rain, Sasuke could see it for what it was. It was belief. Brutal, harsh, demanding belief. "You think you've hit your limit? You think running to a snake is going to make you a man?" Naruto's voice was low, just for Sasuke. Just between them and the statues of dead legends and the rain that didn't care about either of them. That freak doesn't make people stronger. He makes them into things, tools, husks with borrowed power and nothing behind the eyes. Sasuke's hands were on Naruto's wrist, gripping, trying to pull free, and getting absolutely nowhere. The curse mark was burning, fighting against the dark energy that was flooding into its structure, trying to maintain its hold on Sasuke's body, and losing, visibly losing. The gray was receding, the markings were fading, the wings were dissolving at the edges. "Surpass your limits, right here, right now." Naruto's grip tightened once, emphasis, punctuation. "Or I'm gonna kill you myself." Then he hit him, his free hand, the one that had held the black hole, the one that had stopped the Chidori like it was a thrown paper ball, came forward in a straight punch to Sasuke's gut. Full physical power, dark chakra flooding through his knuckles at the point of impact. Everything behind it, the weight of genuine conviction, of real belief that the person he was hitting could be more than what they were choosing to be. The impact was final. The curse mark, already destabilized by the black hole's absorption, already weakened by the dark energy flooding Sasuke's system, already fighting a losing battle against Naruto's overwhelming chakra presence, shattered, visibly. The seal on Sasuke's neck cracked like glass under a hammer, fragments of corrupted chakra flaking off his skin like dead skin in a sunburn, Orochimaru's influence evaporating under a force it was never designed to withstand. The gray skin returned to pale. The markings disappeared. The wings dissolved into nothing. The Sharingan deactivated, Sasuke's eyes rolled, his body went limp. He dropped into the shallow water at the valley's edge, landing face up in the rain, unconscious. Breathing, alive, human again. Naruto stood over him. The rain fell. The valley was silent except for the waterfall and the weather and the distant sounds of a world that didn't know what had just happened here. He looked at Sasuke for a long moment. The kid looked small without the transformation. Young, a boy who had been carrying too much for too long and had been offered a shortcut by a monster who specialized in making shortcuts look like destinies. Naruto pulled out his cigarette pack, extracted one, put it between his lips, lit it in the rain with a small burst of dark chakra from his thumbnail, the flame sizzling against the water coming down around it. He took a drag, let it out slow. "What a pain in the ass," he said. "I could have been taking a dump." He reached down, grabbed Sasuke by the back of his collar, and hauled him up, slinging the unconscious Uchiha over one shoulder like a sack of rice. The kid's arms dangled, his head lolled. Rain ran off both of them in streams. Naruto started walking, back toward Konoha. Back through the forest that parted for him without being asked. Back along the trail where the retrieval team was being collected by medical units. Where the Sound Four lay defeated or fled. Where the machinery of the invasion's last gambit was being cleaned up piece by piece. He walked, and the rain came down. and the cigarette glowed between his teeth. And the Valley of the End, the place where legends fought and friends became enemies, watched him leave with a silence that felt like respect. The gates of Konoha appeared through the rain as the sun broke free of the clouds for the first time all day. They were waiting for him. Tsunade, the new Hokage, appointed in the chaos after the invasion, a woman who took one look at the aftermath reports and agreed to the job with the expression of someone accepting a prison sentence, stood at the gate with her arms crossed and her eyes sharp. Behind her, medical teams. Anbu, Jonin, Guy with Lee and Tenten and Neji, the whole team, bandaged from their own skirmishes during the invasion's fallout, but standing, waiting. Naruto walked through the gate with Sasuke on his shoulder. The rain stopped. The timing was coincidental. It felt symbolic anyway. He walked past the medical team without stopping, past the Anbu, past Tsunade, who opened her mouth to say something, a commendation, a thank you, an order, and closed it again when she felt the dark aura up close for the first time, and her legendary courage had to actively assert itself to keep her feet planted. He walked until he reached his team. He dropped Sasuke into the arms of the nearest medical nin. He looked at Guy, at Lee, at Tenten, at Neji. They looked back. Lee was crying, of course he was. Tenten was smiling despite herself. Neji had the faintest upward shift at the corner of his mouth, so small you need a Byakugan to see it, and even then you might think it was a trick of the light. Guy was beaming through tears that made his face shine. "You brought him back," Guy said. His voice was thick, warm, full of something that went past pride into something deeper. Naruto grunted. He was being an idiot. Idiots need to be hit until they stop being idiots. It's simple. "Naruto-kun," Lee's voice cracked. "You were incredible. The power, the conviction, the absolute refusal to accept." Brows. "It's been a long day. I need a shower and a bathroom and about 14 hours of sleep." "Your dedication to your comrades. I'm gonna kill you. You always say that, but your eyes are kind." Naruto's eyebrow twitched. He took a drag of his cigarette. He blew it upward. The smoke dissipated in the post-rain air, mixing with the gold of the sunset breaking through the clouds. "I'm going inside," Naruto said. He stepped past Lee, past Guy, past the sunset that was somehow getting more orange despite the rain having stopped less than a minute ago. His boots left wet prints on the cobblestones. The katana dripped. Somewhere behind him, a medical nin was trying to stabilize Sasuke's vitals while Lee was asking, loudly, if the unconscious Uchiha needed motivational push-ups performed at his bedside. Naruto walked through the main gate corridor, past the checkpoint, past the guard station, where two Chunin were pretending very hard to have been doing paperwork the entire time and had not been staring through the window at the massive blonde teenager carrying an unconscious body like a grocery bag. He found the nearest public building. He found the hallway to the restrooms. He found a line, 14 people, civilians and shinobi mixed. The invasion had knocked out plumbing to 3/4 of the Eastern District. This was one of the remaining facilities. Naruto stood at the back of the line, hands in his pockets, wet jacket, dark aura low but present, the resting state, the way it always was, a background hum of dense chakra that pressed against everything around him without his conscious input. The woman in front of him turned. She felt the pressure on the back of her neck, that instinct, the lizard brain recognition that something heavy was standing behind her. She looked up. She looked further up. She found his face somewhere above her normal line of sight, and her smile became very thin and very fixed. She stepped out of line. The man in front of her noticed the gap. He turned. He saw. He stepped out. The effect cascaded. One by one, each person in line experienced a very personal moment of self-awareness, a realization that their need for a restroom was perhaps not as urgent as they had believed, or that there was another facility they had forgotten about, or that the universe was simply indicating through the weight of the air that their turn would come later. And that was fine. Absolutely fine. The line cleared in 30 seconds. Nobody ran. Nobody spoke. They simply evaporated like morning dew in the path of something warm. Naruto walked into the restroom. He found a stall. He closed the door. For the first time in 6 hours, Naruto Uzumaki was at peace. 2 days later, Tsunade's office smelled like old paper and fresh determination. The woman behind the Hokage desk was younger than the photographs of her predecessors, sharper, angrier, carrying the kind of beauty that was less a feature and more a weapon depending on her mood. She had honey-colored eyes that missed nothing, and a temper legendary enough to have its own entry in the bingo book. She was not afraid of Naruto Uzumaki. She was, however, extremely aware of him. He stood in front of her desk with his hands in his pockets, jacket open, katana resting against his shoulder like always. An unlit cigarette sat between his lips. He had been summoned. He had considered ignoring the summons. Lee had convinced him otherwise through a process that involved following Naruto for 45 consecutive minutes while screaming about duty and honor until Naruto had said, "Fine, shut up, I'll go," and Lee had wept with joy. Tsunade looked at him. He looked back. She had read the reports, all of them. The dimension slash against Shukaku, one technique, one swing, a tailed beast cut apart by a genin who was annoyed about his bathroom time. She had seen the arena recording from the Chunin exam preliminaries, the 64 palms bouncing off him like thrown cotton, the rotation split by a training sword, the Hyuga prodigy launched into a wall. She had read Guy's assessment, which was 30 pages long and contained the word youth 406 times, but was, beneath the enthusiasm, a deeply serious evaluation of something the village had never produced before. She had also talked to Jiraiya, who had said, in his uncharacteristically serious voice, the one that meant the situation was real, that the boy was carrying something he had never seen in 50 years of studying seals and chakra systems, something that did not match any existing classification, something that was simply there, in him, like it had always been there, like it was born with him, like it was him. "The village owes you a debt," Tsunade said. Naruto looked at her the way you look at someone who has just stated something both obvious and irrelevant. His expression carried a mild confusion, the kind reserved for people who say things you were not expecting because the statement is so far from what you were thinking about. For what? For Shukaku, for Sasuke, for the bandits you put through the walls of their own camp 3 months ago, for the fact that half the invasion force retreated because they saw what you did on that roof and decided living was preferable. Tsunade leaned forward. "The village owes you." Naruto blinked. Slow. His eyes traveled to the window where the village stretched out in its damaged, rebuilding state. He took the cigarette from his lips and held it between 2 fingers without lighting it. "I didn't do it for the village." Tsunade's eyebrow rose. She asked why. He put the cigarette back. He looked at her with those flat blue eyes, the ones that assessed everything and cared about almost none of it. He took a drag off nothing, force of habit, and said through the unlit cigarette, "Because it was my nap, they interrupted." Tsunade stared. He held the stare. The office was silent. The clock on the wall ticked twice. A bird landed on the windowsill, felt the energy in the room, and left. Then the corner of Tsunade's mouth moved. Barely. The kind of motion you would need a microscope or a Byakugan to confirm. It might have been a smile. It might have been the prelude to punching him through the wall. "Get out of my office," she said. He turned and walked toward the door without a backward glance. He paused at the threshold. "Where's the nearest working bathroom?" "3rd floor, east wing. Take a left at the..." "Thanks." He was already gone. His footsteps faded down the hallway, heavy, unhurried. The walk of someone whose business with authority was finished and whose business with plumbing was urgent. Tsunade sat back in her chair. She looked at the door where he had been standing. She looked at the empty space his dark aura had occupied for 4 minutes, asked still slightly heavier than the surrounding air. She picked up her pen. She wrote on the edge of his file, "Do not reassign. Do not promote without cause. Do not antagonize. Do not interrupt bathroom." She underlined the last one. 3 weeks after the invasion, the Sand delegation arrived at Konoha's gates. 3 representatives in formal attire, scrolls of diplomatic apology sealed with the Kazakaji's office mark, and at their front, leading because that was where she belonged, and everyone who knew her had long since stopped suggesting otherwise. Tamari of the Sand. She was tall for her age. Blonde hair pulled back in 4 separate ties that looked aggressive by design. a giant battle fan strapped to her back that weighed more than most chunin could comfortably carry, and which she handled like it was made of paper. Her face carried the permanent expression of someone who had been underestimated exactly once and had ensured it never happened again. She walked through Konoha's gates with her shoulders back and her eyes sharp, cataloging everything, the damage being repaired, the military positions, the flow of the village's recovery. She was here for 3 reasons: formal apology, assessment of damages, and retrieval of her brother. Gaara was in Konoha's hospital, had been since Naruto had put him there 3 weeks ago. The connection between put him there and cut a tailed beast in half with one swing was a thing Temari had been thinking about for 21 consecutive days. She had watched it happen from the stadium. She had seen the dimension slash cross the arena and hit Shikaku from a distance that should have been impossible. With a single swing from a figure she could barely make out on the rooftop, she wanted to look him in the eye. She wanted to understand what she was standing next to. The hospital was on the east side. Temari walked through the lobby, past the front desk, and up the stairwell toward the secured ward where international patients were kept. She turned a corner into the 3rd floor hallway. She stopped. A massive blonde teenager was asleep in a hallway chair, feet on a table. A hat, pulled from somewhere, civilian issue, slightly too small for his head, over his eyes. A katana leaned against the wall beside him. One unlit cigarette rested on his lower lip, held there by muscle memory or possibly defiance of gravity. His arms were crossed over a chest that strained the fabric of a black undershirt. His jacket hung open, his legs extended into the hallway like he was daring someone to trip over them. The dark aura was low, present but restrained. A fire at rest, coals rather than flame. It filled the hallway with a weight that was almost comfortable if you did not think too hard about what comfortable meant when applied to an energy that had dismantled a tailed beast. Temari knew who he was. The proportions were wrong for anyone else. The height, the width, the sense of mass that went past physical into something the air itself seemed to acknowledge. She stopped walking 6 feet from his chair. She stood there for 30 seconds. "You've been standing there for 30 seconds, he said without moving the hat from his eyes. His voice was low, rough, carrying the particular flatness of someone who is always aware and occasionally annoyed by this fact. Say something or keep moving. She did not step back. That was notable. Most people did. She crossed her arms. She said, "How did you know I was here?" in a tone that was less question and more test. "I always know." He did not elaborate. His ki had felt her approach from the stairwell. Sharp energy, wind element, carrying something in it that was neither hostile nor afraid. That combination was rare enough to be interesting. Most people who came toward him carried one or the other. She looked at him for a moment. She said, "You're the one who stopped Shikaku," in the same flat, testing tone. He opened one eye. The hat shifted enough to show a single blue iris, flat, unhurried, reading her in a way that went past visual. His ki was mapping her now, intent, energy, the shape of her personality in the space she occupied. What it told him: she was not here to be impressed, and she was not here to be scared. She was here because she wanted to understand something, because understanding mattered to her, and not understanding irritated her, and she did not leave things that irritated her unresolved. He found this mildly interesting. I'm the one who was in the middle of something important when that thing woke up. He said it flat. He said it real. It was not modesty. It was genuine annoyance, preserved in amber, still warm after 3 weeks. He looked at her for a long moment, not evaluating the way Neji evaluated, measuring for weakness, looking for cracks, looking the way someone looks at a person whose energy has told them something unexpected. Then he closed his eye, hat back down. Your brother is down the hall, 3rd door on the left. He's been awake for 2 days, been still since. A pause. She asked if that was his way of offering to show her. I'm pointing. You can figure the rest out. His eye closed. He resettled in the chair. The conversation was over, from his end at least. He had given her what she needed and returned to what mattered, sleeping in a hallway because Lee had caused a noise complaint at Gaara's bedside involving hundreds of apologetic push-ups and Guy arriving to turn the volume up by 300%. And Naruto had come here to physically remove Lee, and had stayed because the chair was comfortable and the hallway was warm and there was no line for the bathroom on this floor. Tamari stood there. She looked at the hallway stretching toward her brother's room. She looked back at the figure in the chair, too big for the furniture, too present for the space, a contradiction of casual posture and lethal capacity that should not have worked and absolutely did. She said, "I'll find you later," in a voice that was not asking permission. "You probably will." He said it the way you say something you have already seen happen. Because his key had read her intent, the way it read everything. And what it found, there was someone who had decided something and was going to follow through regardless of what he said about it. Tamari turned and walked down the hall. Her footsteps were even, unhurried, carrying nothing that suggested she had been thrown off balance by the exchange. She had not been. She had learned what she needed to learn. He was exactly what she thought he was. And he was also something else underneath it that she had not expected. The something else was what she would come back for. Gaara's room was plain, hospital standard. The bed was made with military corners by someone who clearly did not know that the patient had never once gotten under the covers. Gaara sat cross-legged on top of the sheets, his back against the headboard, wearing hospital clothes that made him look younger than he was. Smaller, the sand armor was gone. Tamari had never seen him without it. Not since he was 6 years old and the demon's influence had sealed the protective layer permanently to his skin. Now he sat bare-faced, bare-armed, his skin pale and real and unhidden. He was looking at his hands, turning them over, examining them the way someone examines something they have not seen in a very long time. She sat beside the bed. She did not say his name. She just sat and waited and let him come to it. He said it took 2 days to realize the armor was not coming back. He said the chakra pattern that maintained it had been severed, cut the same way the construct had been cut, at a level too deep for Shukaku to repair without the full-tailed beast's cooperation. And Shukaku was not cooperating. The one tail had been silent since the fight, hiding, pressed into the furthest corner of Gaara's seal, like a thing that had learned a very permanent lesson about making noise. He said what it felt like, hitting a wall that was alive, feeling the sand construct, massive, ancient, backed by a demon's full power, get split by something that did not even hesitate. He said he felt Shukaku scream, not roar, scream, a sound of pain and confusion from something that had believed itself invincible for longer than most nations had existed. He said he was afraid, for the first time since he was a child, a real fear, not of death, because he had been ready for death since the day his father first tried to kill him. A fear of irrelevance, of meeting something that made everything he was, the demon, the sand, the armor, the killing, look small, look meaningless, look like a child's tantrum in front of a grown man's indifference. He looked at Tamari. His eyes, green, ringed with dark circles that would never fully fade, held something new in them. Something that had been cracked open by dimensional slash and was now letting light in whether it wanted to or not. Tamari reached out. She put her hand on his. He flinched. A lifetime of refusing contact, of sand punishing anyone who got close, and then was still. The sand did not rise. Nothing happened. Just a sister's hand on a brother's hand in a hospital room. "We're going home," she said, "but not yet." The delegation stayed for 10 days. The diplomatic work took 3. The rest was assessment, coordination, the slow machinery of 2 military villages re-establishing trust after one tried to destroy the other. Tamari led the talks with a competence that made the Konoha Council members look at her twice and reassess what they thought the Sand's younger generation was capable of. She also kept finding Naruto, not pursuing him. Tamari did not pursue. She existed in spaces where he also existed, and he kept not leaving when she arrived. And this repeated itself with a frequency that stopped being coincidental by day 4, training ground 9. She walked past it on a route that technically went past it if you took 2 unnecessary turns. Naruto was leaning against his log, katana across his knees, watching Lee run laps with weights that should have been illegal for someone his size. He felt her ki before she cleared the tree line. He did not look up. He said, "You took the long way." She came to stand at the edge of the clearing with her fan on her back and her arms crossed. She said she was exploring the village. "You've explored this part twice." She asked if he kept count of everything or just things that annoyed him. He said the two categories had significant overlap. She said something about his personality being as welcoming as his aura. He said the aura kept most people away, and that was the point. She said it had not kept her away. He looked at her for the first time that day. He said, "I noticed." Day 6. She found him at a ramen stand. He was eating, the only activity that seemed to genuinely hold his attention beyond fighting and sleeping. Large bowl, extra everything. Eating with the focused energy of someone who treated food the way a furnace treated coal. She sat on the stool beside him. She ordered. They ate without talking for 8 full minutes. Then she said she had been wondering something since the arena. He asked what with a mouth half full of noodles. She asked what it cost him. The dimension slash, the dark energy, the things he did that broke the rules of what people could do. She wanted to know if there was a price. He swallowed. He put his chopsticks down. He looked at the countertop with an expression that suggested the question was more complicated than she realized, and also less complicated than she feared. He said, "My back hurts when it's cold." She waited. He said, "That's it." She stared at him. He picked up his chopsticks and kept eating. She said that was not what she meant. He said he knew what she meant. He said the answer was no. There was no soul cost, no lifespan reduction, no hidden sacrifice. It was his. It was always his. It came with him when he came into this world, and it would leave with him when he left. She said that was unfair. He said, yeah. He sounded like he had thought so too once, and then decided thinking about fairness was a waste of time when you could be training instead. She finished her ramen. She left money for both of them. He looked at the money. He looked at her. She said it was not a favor. It was the cost of picking his brain. He said she was overpaying. Day 9. Training ground 9 again. Morning. The rest of Team Guy was deployed on a local mission. Structural repair assistance in the Eastern District, which translated to Lee carrying rubble at inspiring speeds, while Neji directed and Tenten kept track of what went where. Naruto had been exempted because Tsunade had looked at the mission parameters, looked at Naruto's capability assessment, looked at the assignment, and said, "That's like sending a cannon to wash dishes." He was alone at the training ground. Or he was until she walked out of the tree line with her fan already unstrapped and a look on her face that was half question and half challenge. She asked if he would fight her. He looked up from where he was sitting against his log. Cigarette trailing smoke into the morning air. His eyes traveled over her. The fan's weight, her stance, the way she held herself like someone expecting the answer to be no and ready to argue about it. You couldn't handle it. Maybe I want to find out. He looked at her for a long beat. The cigarette burned between his fingers. The morning was golden around them, the way mornings in Konoha always were. The sun cutting through old trees at angles that made everything sharp and alive. He said, "Come back tomorrow." She came back tomorrow, morning, 6 a.m. He was already there, standing in the center of the clearing, katana sheathed and leaning against a post, hands in his pockets. He had been there since 5. He had not slept. He told himself this was because he trained early. He did not examine that statement too closely. She arrived with her fan out and her eyes sharp. She planted her feet. She opened the fan, 1 star, 2 stars, 3 stars, the full spread revealing the surface area that turned her chakra into a weapon the size of a room. Rules, she asked. Don't die. She swung, wind release at combat speed. A cutting gale launched from the fan's surface with enough force to shear branches off trees and enough width to cover the entire clearing in one sweep. It was fast. It was dangerous. Against most opponents, it was fight ending before the fight began. Naruto stepped left. Not fast. At his pace, his normal walking pace, his "I'm heading to the bathroom" pace. The wind went past him close enough to tug at his jacket and far enough to touch nothing vital. His ki had read the trajectory before her shoulders started the swing, the wind up, the angle, the width of the release. All of it mapped before the fan completed its motion. She swung again, wider, faster, adjusting for his movement, cutting off the angle she had seen him use. The wind came in layers this time, 3 waves stacked with different timing, designed to catch someone who dodged the first with the second and the second with the third. He stepped. Once. A single lateral movement that put him between the second and third waves in the gap she had left because her timing was off by a fraction of a second. He stood there while the wind roared on either side of him, jacket flapping, hair wild, untouched. She swung again, and again, and again. 6 minutes. 12 full-force attacks. Everyone faster than the last, everyone adjusting for what he had done to avoid the previous. She was good, genuinely good, upper Chunin wind manipulation. The kind of elemental control that came from years of dedicated practice and genuine affinity. Her wind was sharp. Her instincts were real. Her adjustments were smart. He stepped through every single one of them without using a technique. His ki read her attacks the way a person reads a sentence, front to back, completely, with full comprehension before the last word lands. He moved the way water moves around stone, present, unhurried, fundamentally indifferent to the force being applied. She stopped swinging. She was breathing hard, sweat on her face, fan at her side, the weight suddenly apparent in her arms. She was looking at him with an expression that contained frustration and something else. Something hotter than frustration, something that might have been admiration and might have been attraction, and was definitely the feeling of encountering someone who made everything you had look exactly as limited as it was. He looked at her, hands still in his pockets, not breathing hard, not sweating, not anything that suggested the last 6 minutes had required more effort than standing still. He said, "Your timing is off on the third strike." She threw the fan at him. Not a technique, not a wind release. She physically hurled the battle fan, a weapon that weighed more than a grown man's torso, directly at his face with both hands. It was a reflex born of frustration and the particular rage of someone who has been made to look small by someone who was not even trying. He caught it. One hand, out of his pocket fast enough that the motion blurred, closing around the fan's handle in mid-air with a grip that stopped its momentum dead. The weapon's weight settled in his palm without his arm moving. He held it at his side like it was made of nothing. Then he held it out to her, handle first, offering it back the way you return something you borrowed. She stepped forward to take it. Their hands were on the handle together, hers closing over the grip, his still holding it. The closest they had been physically. Close enough to see the exact shade of his eyes in full daylight. Close enough to feel the dark aura against her skin. A pressure that was warm rather than crushing at this distance, like standing beside something that radiated energy the way a sun radiates heat. Neither of them moved back. 5 seconds passed in that space. Her green eyes on his blue ones. His expression flat, unreadable, carrying something behind it that his face was not designed to express outwardly, and which was expressed anyway in the way he did not let go of the fan handle. She pulled the fan from his grip. She stepped back. She resettled the weapon on her back with motions that were slightly less steady than usual, the kind of unsteadiness she would deny if asked, and which disappeared by the time the strap was secured. She said, "I'm leaving tomorrow." He said, "I know." She said, "I'll come back." He looked at her. His cigarette had gone out during the spar, crushed in his pocket at some point, forgotten. He reached for a new one, put it between his lips, did not light it. He said, "I know that too." She left the training ground. Her footsteps were steady. Her shoulders were back. She did not look over her shoulder because she was Tamari, and Tamari did not look over her shoulder. But the corner of her mouth, just slightly, just enough, shifted upward as she walked. Naruto stood alone in the clearing. He looked at the place where her wind had cut through the trees. He looked at his hand, the one that had held the fan, that had been close enough to feel her grip through the handle. He lit the cigarette. He blew smoke at the sky. He said "shh" to nobody and went to find a working bathroom. 5 months passed. Konoha rebuilt. The village filled its cracks with new stone and its losses with new determination. Missions resumed at full capacity. The alliance with Sand solidified. 2 villages that had been at each other's throats, now bound by shared enemies, and the particular gravity of 2 people who kept finding excuses for diplomatic visits. Team Guy operated at a level that made other teams look like hobbyists. Lee had opened 3 gates without permission, without instruction, and without injury. The pure result of a body trained beyond what reason allowed, and a will that treated limits as personal insults. He could feel ki now. Not like Naruto, not a full sphere of awareness, but he could sense intent in close range. In sparring, this meant he was landing hits on opponents who should have seen him coming. In combat, this meant he was becoming something the bingo book would eventually carry with a warning next to his name. Neiji's gentle fist had evolved. The strict forms of the Hyuga remained. He would always be a Hyuga. That was in his blood and in the seal and in the way his eyes saw the world. But the philosophy had shifted. Where before he struck to close and seal, now he struck to understand and redirect. He had watched Naruto read ki enough times to grasp what it was, and while he could not replicate the sense itself, he could approximate it through the Byakugan's existing capability. His combat speed had doubled. His ability to read opponents had tripled. Tenten had stopped keeping her notebook, not because she had nothing to write, because she had filled 6 of them. She was on her 7th. Her accuracy was past frightening and into a territory that had its own classification. In recent testing, she had hit 37 moving targets in 37 different positions in under 4 seconds. The weapons she used were increasingly experimental, increasingly dangerous, and increasingly capable of doing what her team needed when they needed it. Guy was Guy. He cried. He trained. He gave speeches. He loved his team with the force of a natural event. The Green Beast had not changed and never would, because what he was existed beyond improvement and beyond criticism. He simply was, and what he was made people around him better. Naruto had grown another inch. His jaw had squared. The scar on his face, still unexplained, still refused questions, was paler against skin that had tanned from months of outdoor training. The katana on his shoulder was the same. The cigarette was the same. The dark aura was the same, present, constant, a fact of the world like weather. 5 months. Then the key shifted. It was a Tuesday, except Naruto did not think about the day. He was eating ramen. Second bowl. The stall was warm and steam rose from the broth, and Tochi was telling a story about a customer who had tried to eat 15 bowls in one sitting. Naruto was on his 8th and not slowing down. He paused. Chopsticks halfway to his mouth, noodles dangling. His eyes went to the horizon, east, past the village walls, past the forests, past the first ridge of mountains. His ki was spread wide, as it always was. 2 presences had just crossed the border. The first was dark, layered, carrying something deep and old and complex. A person who had done terrible things and built peace with every one of them, the way a mason builds a wall one stone at a time. The second was hunger given legs, a walking appetite with a sword on its back, a sword that thought, that ate, that wanted, Itachi Uchiha. Kasame Hoshigaki, looking for the 9 tails Jinchuriki. Naruto set his chopsticks down. He looked at his ramen. He looked at the horizon. He looked at his ramen again. Tochi-san. Put a lid on this. I'll be back. He stood. He paid. He left the stall and walked into the forest at a pace that was faster than casual, but slower than urgent. His katana shifted on his shoulder. His cigarette trailed smoke through the canopy gaps. The dark chakra was rising, not consciously, not as preparation, simply responding to what his ki was sensing and what his instincts were reading. He found a clearing 2 miles from the village. A wide space between old trees, ground soft with fallen leaves, canopy open enough to let the afternoon light through in columns. He sat beneath the tree. He laid his katana across his knees. He closed his eyes. He waited 14 minutes. The first thing that changed was the ambient chakra. The air grew heavier, denser, in a way that was distinct from Naruto's own pressure. This was a different flavor of heavy, wetter. It smelled like ocean water and fresh blood, and the particular stink of a blade that had been used more times than it had been cleaned. Kasame came through the trees first. Samehada was out, unwrapped, the scales bristling, the living sword already reaching with its absorption mechanism toward the dense energy filling the clearing. The shark man was grinning. He always grinned. It was the default expression of a person who had decided everything in the world existed to be eaten or to be fought, and that both outcomes were equally enjoyable. Ho? Kasame stopped at the clearing's edge. Samehada's bristles were reaching forward, straining toward the dark chakra the way a dog strains at a leash toward food. So this is the kid. You don't feel like a kid. Naruto opened his eyes. He looked at Kasame with an expression that said this person was present and was cataloged and was not particularly concerning. He looked at Samahata. His ki read the sword, the strange pseudo-life inside it, the absorption pathways, the mechanism by which it consumed chakra from anything it contacted. "Your sword is going to choke," he said. Samahata's bristles were getting more aggressive, reaching, pulling, trying to draw in the ambient dark energy filling the space around Naruto. The absorption mechanism activated and stalled. The scales retracted instead of extending. A shudder ran through the living blade from tip to handle. The dense foreign energy it was trying to consume was not something its system could process. Too heavy, too thick, too fundamentally different from any chakra the blade had encountered in its centuries of existence. Kasame felt it through his grip. His grin slipped just a fraction. He pulled Samahata back, holding it at guard distance. "Well, that's new." Naruto stood. His hand found his katana's handle. He drew in a single motion, the blade rising from his knees to his shoulder in one fluid arc, dark chakra flooding into the metal the instant it cleared the sheath. The air bent. Dark magic, dark cloaked EI slash. The quick draw fired. One slash of darkness launching from the blade's edge at a speed that crossed the clearing before the sound of the draw reached the tree line. It hit Samahata because Kasame raised the sword on instinct. The legendary weapon's absorption had saved him from every attack for 20 years. The dark energy hit the scales. Samahata tried to absorb it. For half a second, the sword's mechanism engaged, pulling, consuming, processing. Then it reversed. The dark energy was not being absorbed. It was eating in the other direction, consuming Samahata's internal chakra, the stored energy of 100 fights and 1,000 consumed jutsu, pulling it out of the blade's structure the way a drain pulls water. Samahata screamed. The sound was not human. It was not animal. It was the sound of a living weapon experiencing something it had never experienced in centuries of existence, being consumed in turn. Kasame yanked the sword back. His arm, the one holding Samahata, was numb from the elbow down. The scales had retracted fully, pressed flat against the blade in a defensive posture. Kasame had never seen it adopt. The sword was shaking, actually shaking. Kasame's grin was gone. His expression was something between shock and the beginning of a reassessment, so fundamental it restructured his entire approach to the next 30 seconds. A voice came from the tree line. Even. Measured. Carrying the particular calm of someone who has calculated everything about a situation and found it manageable. Kasame. Itachi Uchiha stepped out of the shadows, red eyes active, 3 Tomoe Sharingan spinning, the legendary Dujutsu reading everything it could see with the processing speed of a mind that had been called genius since before it could spell the word. He was shorter than Naruto expected. Compact, built for speed and precision rather than overwhelming force. His Akatsuki cloak hung from his shoulders with the weight of membership in something that hunted gods. Itachi's Sharingan was mapping Naruto's chakra system, or trying to. The Byakugan had struggled with it. The Sharingan fared no better. The dark energy filling Naruto's coils was opaque to visual analysis, too dense to see through, too foreign to categorize, like looking at a river that ran with black oil instead of water. Naruto looked at him. His ki read Itachi. The complex layered presence. The guilt buried under discipline. The love buried under years of terrible choices. The disease that was eating him from the inside. The countdown he was running against. He said, "You're going to try the eyes." Itachi's expression did not change. His hands were already moving. Not hand signs, something subtler. The genjutsu was building in the environment itself. Chakra threads woven through the air currents, through the light, through the angle at which Naruto was perceiving the clearing. Layered traps designed to activate in sequence, each one catching anyone who broke free of the previous. Naruto felt them appear. His ki watched them bloom like invisible flowers in the space around him. Here, 4 meters to his left, directly above, behind him, everywhere Itachi's genius had decided to plant a seed. "Do not," Naruto said. "They will not work on me." Itachi completed the sequence. His Sharingan shifted, the Tomoe rotating faster, the iris flattening, the eye becoming something more. The Mangekyo Sharingan activated. The pattern was unique, a pinwheel of red and black, the legendary eyes that saw past reality and into the space where the world could be rewritten. Tsukuyomi. The most powerful genjutsu in the shinobi world fired. It hit Naruto's eyes, the only vector it needed, the direct line between one consciousness and another, the 72 hours of torment compressed into a fraction of a second that was designed to break any mind it touched. It hit the dark chakra flowing through Naruto's system. 3 seconds. The Tsukuyomi attempted to establish itself. It tried to build the illusory world, the red sky, the black moon, the space where Itachi was God and the victim was nothing. The dark energy inside Naruto's mind met the invading construct the way an ocean meets a cup of water poured into it. The genjutsu could not establish, it could not find purchase, it could not create a world in a consciousness that was already so full of dense, heavy, real energy that there was no space left for illusion to exist. 3 seconds, then nothing, collapsed, gone. The Tsukuyomi, 72 hours of absolute mental domination, the technique that had broken Anbu captains and put Jonin into permanent comas, disintegrated against the surface of something it was never built to handle. Itachi went still. His Mangekyo was still active. His eyes were bleeding. The standard cost, the price the Uchiha clan paid for the highest power of their lineage. A thin line of red tracked down his left cheek. He was staring at Naruto with an expression that, on anyone less controlled, would have been open shock. Naruto stood. The dark aura rose. Not a burst, a tide. A steady, constant increase in pressure that did not stop, that kept building, that pushed outward from him in all directions with the inevitability of water running downhill. The trees at the clearing's edge began to crack, root systems failing under the gravitational pressure, trunks splintering at their weakest points, branches snapping and falling. Kisame took 3 steps backward. The Shark Man, former 7 swordsman, A-rank missing nin, a person who had killed Kaj-level opponents and smiled about it, took 3 involuntary steps backward. His body had made the decision without consulting his pride. Samehada was still shaking against his back. Kisame had never taken an involuntary step backward in his life. He was taking 3. Naruto looked at both of them. His eyes were flat. His face carried nothing that could be called emotion, and everything that could be called finality. The katana hung at his side, dark energy coating the blade without him having to channel it. His power responding to his intent automatically, the way a body sweats without being told to. You came here for the 9 tails. His voice carried across the clearing and pressed against them. The 9 tails is mine. Come back for it, and I will cut your organization into pieces. He looked at Itachi, held the stare, those bleeding Mangekyo eyes, the legendary visual jutsu, the mind behind them that had orchestrated a massacre and carried it like a cross for a decade. Naruto held that stare and his expression did not flicker. He was not intimidated. He was not interested. He was delivering information and the delivery was complete. He turned his back on both of them. He walked toward the village. His katana went back to his shoulder. The dark aura settled, gradually, like a wave receding, the pressure pulling back as he moved away. The trees stopped cracking. The air regained its normal weight. The clearing breathed again in the absence of what had been standing in it. Itachi watched him go, his Meikyo deactivated, the bleeding slowing, the eyes returning to their standard 3-tomo state. His face was its mask. Behind the mask, calculations were running. Threat assessment, capability analysis, probability mapping. Every calculation arrived at the same conclusion, the same impossible, undeniable conclusion. After a long silence, a minute, maybe more, Itachi spoke. Report to Pain. Tell him the Jinchuriki is not what the intelligence suggested. Kisame looked at Samehada. The sword was still pressed flat against its own body, scales retracted, the living weapon's equivalent of curling into a ball. He looked at the tree line where Naruto had disappeared. He asked what the intelligence had suggested. Itachi's eyes were on the tree line. His face was empty. His voice was even. Something manageable. They left, into the trees. In the opposite direction, behind them in the clearing, the residual dark energy clung to the broken trees like tar. It would take 3 days to fully dissipate. Naruto returned to the ramen stall. Tochi had kept the lid on his bowl as requested. The broth was still warm. He sat. He removed the lid. He picked up his chopsticks. He ate. Tochi looked at him. The old man was observant the way food vendors are always observant. He watched people. He read them. He knew when something had happened by the way they held their shoulders. "Everything okay, Naruto-kun?" Naruto slurped noodles. He swallowed. He said some people showed up. "They left." "Oh, that's good." "Yeah." He finished his bowl. He ordered a third. 2 weeks later, a B-rank mission. Merchant escort through the northern forests, a routine assignment that existed because bandits had repopulated the routes cleared during Team Guy's early days, because nature abhors a vacuum and criminals are a renewable resource. Naruto walked ahead of the merchant's cart. The forest was thick here, old-growth canopy, ground soft with decay, the kind of dense vegetation that bred ambushes and rewarded patience. The merchant was a middle-aged man carrying silk worth enough to retire on, and he was sweating despite the cool air. Naruto's ki was spread wide, passive. Reading every living thing in a 200-meter radius without conscious effort, he felt them arrive. 10 signatures. Modified. Wrong. Carrying Orochimaru's particular brand in their chakra systems, the Snake's experiments, his enhanced soldiers, bodies pushed past their natural architecture through forbidden techniques and sealed modifications. Each one was Jonin level in raw output. Each one was positioned with military precision, a circle, closing, designed to eliminate the gap between awareness and response. Naruto stopped walking. The merchant bumped into his back. The man opened his mouth to say something and closed it immediately when the dark aura spiked, a sudden increase in pressure that made the merchant's knees go soft and his vision narrow. "Stay behind me," Naruto said. "Don't move." The merchant sat down in the middle of the road, not by choice. His legs had simply decided that standing was no longer a priority. The ambush sprang, all 10, simultaneously, from every direction. Fire released from the east, a combined volley of 3 B-rank jutsu that lit the canopy. Water released from the west, a pressurized stream designed to cut rather than drown. Earth released from below, the ground erupting in spike formations meant to impale. From above, 2 modified soldiers dropping with enhanced speed and bladed weapons coated in poison. 10 Jonin-level combatants firing their full output at a single target with no warning and no hesitation. Naruto activated Mana Zone. Dark chakra exploded outward. Not a pulse, not something that happened and stopped. A controlled expansion that filled a 40-meter sphere with his energy, his will, his absolute dominion over the space. Every cubic inch of air within the sphere became his. The ambient chakra was consumed, replaced, overwritten. The Mana Zone established itself in the time between one heartbeat and the next, and the world within its boundary became something else entirely. The incoming jutsu hit the sphere's edge. The fire release entered the Mana Zone and was consumed. Not deflected, consumed. The dark energy pulled the fire apart at the chakra level, separating the technique from the will that shaped it, and the flame simply ceased to exist. No heat, no light, nothing remained. The water release spiraled. The pressurized stream hit the sphere and curved, pulled off course by the dark energy filling the space, redirected into a spiral that tightened and compressed until the water was a dense ball of nothing that collapsed into the void. The earth spikes crumbled. The dark energy got beneath their structure, between the earth chakra and the physical matter it was reshaping, and tore the connection apart. The spikes fell back into the ground as loose dirt. The 2 from above entered the sphere. They were inside. They were committed. Their momentum was carrying them toward Naruto at speeds their modified bodies could sustain. They had blades out. Their enhanced muscles were firing at maximum output. Naruto looked up at them. He said, "Dark magic, dark cloak dimension / equinox." Dimensional slashes released from everywhere. Not from the sword, from the space itself, from the Mana Zone, from the dark energy filling every inch of 40 meters. The slashes came from below, from above, from every lateral angle, from directions that did not have names because human architecture was not built to process what was happening. 10 combatants, 4 seconds. The dimensional slashes hit everything within the sphere that was not Naruto and was not the merchant cowering behind him. Every modified body, every weapon, every technique still forming, still being channeled, still existing in the space. The slashes did not wound, they did not disable. They did what dimensional slashes did. They cut. At a level that went past physical and into the structure of reality itself. What they cut did not reform. 4 seconds. Then silence. The mana zone settled. The sphere of dark energy contracted, pulling back in, condensing, returning to its resting state against Naruto's body. The clearing revealed itself. The forest within the sphere did not look like a forest anymore. Trees were sliced at angles that defied the natural grain of wood. The ground was scored with lines that were perfectly straight and impossibly thin, and the 10 modified soldiers that Orochimaru had sent, his best, his investments, his enhanced weapons, were no longer a concern for anyone. Naruto sheathed his katana. He turned to the merchant. The man was sitting in the road with his knees pulled to his chest, his arms wrapped around them, his face the color of old paper. He was making a sound, a very small, very consistent sound that might have been breathing, and might have been the vocal expression of someone whose understanding of the world had just been forcibly expanded. "We're moving," Naruto said. "Stay close." The merchant stood. It took him 2 attempts. He stayed close. He did not speak for the rest of the trip. When they arrived at the destination and the silk was delivered and the payment was exchanged, the merchant pressed extra money into Naruto's hand with a grip that was reverent and trembling. Naruto looked at the money. He pocketed it. He said, "Pleasure doing business." The merchant did not make eye contact. Tsunade's office. The mission scroll hit her desk. Snake Freak tried again. Naruto said. Tsunade picked up the scroll. She unrolled it. She read the after-action report. Concise, because Naruto's reports were always concise, because the man wrote the way he talked, and the way he talked was as few words as possible delivered with maximum finality. She said, "Casualties on our side? No. His side? Yes." She stamped the report. Her expression did not change. She had been Hokage for 5 months, and she had already developed the particular faculty of a leader who understood that one of her assets was so far above the normal operating parameters that conventional evaluation did not apply. She managed Naruto the way you managed a natural resource: gratitude for its existence, awareness of its presence, and an understanding that any attempt to control it would be laughed at. Mission complete. Get out of my office. He left. He walked down the hallway toward the stairwell. Lee was doing push-ups in the hallway. This was not unusual. Lee did push-ups in every hallway, at every opportunity, at every moment where his body was not required to be doing something else. He was on his 3rd 100. His arms were shaking. His face was pressed toward the floor with each rep and lifting with the force of absolute commitment. Naruto stepped over him without breaking stride. Lee screamed, "Naruto-kun, your aura, your power, the mission. How many enemies? Tell me everything. I must know so I can train harder. I must." Naruto was already at the stairwell. His voice floated back. "Brows, I swear to God, become worthy of fighting beside you. The flames of, I'm gonna kill you. Your threats fill me with joy." Naruto went down the stairs. Lee's push-up speed doubled. Both of them continued their existence in perfect parallel. One going down, one going lower, and coming back up, over and over. Forever. The curse mark was gone. Sasuke Uchiha sat in his apartment and looked at his hands without marks on them. The skin was clean, pale, smooth, free of the black patterns that had crawled across his body for months like a map to something hungry. The space where the mark had been, the junction of his neck and shoulder, the spot Orochimaru's teeth had branded, was smooth, unblemished, as if it had never been there. It had been torn out of him. One punch. A single blow at the valley of the end that had carried enough force and enough dark energy to shatter the seal at a fundamental level, to erase Orochimaru's investment the way you erase a word from a page. The snake's influence, gone. The borrowed power, gone. The whispers, the hunger, the constant pull towards something dark and waiting, gone. What remained was Sasuke. Just Sasuke. A boy with red eyes and a dead family, and a brother who haunted him like a debt he could not pay and could not forgive. A boy who was, for the first time since that night in Orochimaru's forest, making decisions from a mind that was entirely his own. He trained. He trained like a person possessed by something better than what had been possessing him before. His Sharingan opened further. The 3rd Tomoe was spinning faster. His prediction was sharper. His copy ability was finding details that his curse-mark clouded mind had been too distorted to process. His fire techniques burned hotter. His lightning ran truer. His body moved faster because his mind was clearer and clarity was a multiplier that no borrowed power could replicate. 3 months after the valley, a morning at Training Ground 9, Team Guy was deployed. Naruto was alone. Sasuke walked across the training ground and sat on the opposite log without saying anything. Naruto smoked. He was leaning against his log with his feet up, eyes half closed, katana across his thighs. He felt Sasuke's ki from the moment the Uchiha entered the training ground's perimeter. He said nothing. He smoked. 5 minutes passed. Wind moved through the trees. Birds sang with the particular enthusiasm of birds that did not understand the weight of what was happening on the ground beneath them. Naruto said, "What do you want?" Sasuke was looking at the ground. His hands were on his knees, loose, open, not fists. His Sharingan was dormant. His face was carrying something that cost him to carry, the weight of a request from someone who had never asked anyone for anything, because asking meant admitting you could not do it alone. He said he wanted to fight Itachi. Naruto took a drag. He blew smoke. He said you can barely take a C-rank solo without showing off. Sasuke's jaw tightened. A muscle moved in his cheek. He said, "I know." A beat. The wind moved. A leaf fell between them. Sasuke said, "Teach me." The word hung in the air, enormous for Sasuke Uchiha to produce. The cost of it was visible in the set of his shoulders, the way his eyes stayed fixed on the ground, the way his hands stayed open instead of closing into fists. This was a person who had been offered the shortcut and refused it, and was now standing at the base of the real mountain, looking up and admitting it was tall. Naruto's ki read the cost, read the authenticity, read the thing underneath the pride that had finally, after months of healing and clarity and the image of real power burning in his memory, broken through to the surface. Naruto said, "I'm not going to teach you." Sasuke's head came up. His eyes were dark, sharp, carrying the first spark of something that might become anger. "You're going to train. I'm going to say when you're doing it wrong." He looked at Sasuke with those flat blue eyes. "One means I'm responsible for what you become. The other means you are." Pause. Long. The wind moved again. Naruto said, "Which do you want?" Sasuke was still. His hands were still open. His eyes were on Naruto's, reading, processing, understanding what was being offered and what it demanded. He said, "The second one." Naruto took a drag. He stood. He dropped the cigarette and ground it under his boot. He looked at Sasuke with an expression that carried something the Uchiha had never received from anyone except his mother. An expectation that he would succeed, delivered without qualification or condition. "Then start running. Come back when you can keep up with me." Sasuke stood. He ran. He did not ask for direction or distance or duration because the instruction was the instruction and the point was that he would find his own limit and go past it. Naruto sat back down. He lit another cigarette. He smoked, and underneath the flat expression and the bored posture, something in his chest recognized what it was looking at. Another person with everything to prove and nothing to lose, and the kind of stubbornness that either made legends or made corpses. He had seen that before, in Lee, in himself, in the back of his skull where instinct lived and memory ran deeper than one lifetime. The training happened over weeks. Naruto did not hold Sasuke's hand. He did not give speeches. He watched Sasuke train, watched the Uchiha push himself through conditioning that would have hospitalized most Chunin, watched the fire techniques grow hotter, and the lightning grow sharper, and the body grow faster. And when something was wrong, he said so. Your stance is wide. Your rotation is late. You're looking where you're attacking instead of where the counter is coming from. Short, blunt, always right. Sasuke adjusted, and the adjustments landed immediately. The Sharingan's copy ability, taking Naruto's corrections and implementing them with a speed that would have made other instructors jealous. Not of Sasuke's learning speed, of the fact that Naruto saw what needed fixing without effort, without analysis, without a fraction of a second between observation and diagnosis. The moment came on a Tuesday afternoon that Naruto did not track. They were sparring, Sasuke at full speed, Sharingan active, pushing everything he had against an opponent who was moving at what Sasuke had finally realized was still not anywhere close to full capacity. Naruto moved at combat speed, real combat speed, the pace he used against things that mattered, not his maximum, but fast enough that Sasuke's three-tomo Sharingan was running at its absolute ceiling to track the motion. Sasuke's eyes burned. His predictions stretched. His mind pushed against the wall of what the three-tomo could process. The speed was too much, too fast. The gap between seeing and responding was narrowing towards zero, and the Sharingan was screaming. For a fraction of a second, one instant, one heartbeat, Sasuke read it. The motion, the next position, the trajectory and the timing, and the exact moment the strike would arrive. He read it because his eyes changed. The tomoe shifted, rotated. The pattern in his iris restructured, red and black swirling into something new, something more, something that saw the world at a level of detail that three-tomo could not access. The Mangekyo Sharingan activated, not through loss, not through murder, through the act of surpassing a limit that his eyes had been designed to represent. The ceiling that everyone told him was final, broken through by sheer force of will, pressing against an opponent who demanded nothing less. One instant. Then the eyes settled back. The Mangekyo faded. The moment passed. But it had happened. Naruto lowered his hand. He looked at Sasuke. The Uchiha was standing with his chest heaving, sweat on his face, his eyes still burning with the afterimage of what they had just become. Naruto said, "There, nothing else." He did not explain. He did not congratulate. He turned and walked to his log and sat down and lit a cigarette, and that was the end of the training session. Sasuke stood in the clearing for a very long time. His hands were shaking. His eyes were wet, from strain, from the activation, from something else he would not name. He had spent years being told the Mangekyo required loss, required pain, required watching someone you loved die. He had gained it by reaching for something above him and refusing to stop. He did not say thank you. He was still Sasuke. But when he left the training ground, his posture was different. His shoulders were different. The set of his jaw was different. Something had shifted that would not shift back. Intelligence arrived 6 days later. Itachi Uchiha. Land of Rain. Alone, Naruto received the information from Guy, who received it from Tsunade, who received it from Jiraiya's spy network. The location was confirmed. The opportunity was real. Sasuke was in the Hokage's office within the hour. "I'm going." Tsunade looked at him. She looked at his eyes, the same dark irises they had always been, but carrying something behind them now that had not been there before. She had read the training reports. She knew what had happened at Training Ground 9. She said, "Not alone." Sasuke said he was not going alone. Tsunade's eyebrow rose. She asked who. Sasuke said, "Uzumaki." Tsunade leaned back in her chair. She thought about this for exactly 2 seconds. Then she stamped the authorization, because the combination of those two names on a mission scroll meant the mission would succeed, and the only question was how much property damage the Land of Rain could absorb. They left at dawn. Naruto walked with his katana on his shoulder and his hands in his jacket pockets. Sasuke walked beside him, matching pace, silent, carrying the weight of what he was walking toward with a focus that left no room for conversation. They did not speak for the first 3 hours. Then Sasuke said, "If I can't finish it, you'll finish it. If I can't, then I'll make sure you can." Sasuke looked at him. Naruto did not look back. His eyes were on the road ahead, and his ki was scanning the horizon, and his face was carrying the same flat indifference it always carried, and none of it concealed the fact that what he had just said was a promise, and he meant it completely. They walked. Temari was at the village gate when they left. She had arrived 2 days ago. Another diplomatic visit, another excuse that was wearing thin as excuses and thick as intention. She was leaning against the gate post with her fan on her back, watching them approach, watching them pass. Naruto slowed. He did not stop. He turned his head. She was looking at him with green eyes that carried something more complex than worry and more honest than courage. She said, "Come back." He looked at her. The flat expression held for a moment. Then, barely, just at the edges, something shifted. Something that was not a smile and was not nothing and existed in a space between the two that only she had ever earned the right to see. He said, "Always do." He kept walking. She watched them go. 2 dark-haired and blonde figures moving down the road into distance and morning light. She did not look away until they were gone. She leaned against the gate post. She crossed her arms. She waited. The Land of Rain was gray. Everything was gray. The sky, the buildings, the people, the water that fell constantly and never stopped because this country had decided that being wet was an identity. The rain was cold and persistent, and it soaked through clothes in minutes, and it smelled like iron and old stone. They found him in an abandoned district on the city's edge, a complex of empty buildings, warehouses once, storage for trade goods that no longer moved through a nation perpetually at war with itself. The rain hammered the rooftops, puddles covered every surface. The air was dense with moisture and cold. Itachi was waiting. He stood in the center of a wide courtyard between warehouses. His Akatsuki cloak was soaked, his hair was plastered to his face. His Sharingan was active, red eyes burning in the gray like embers in ash. He was alone. Kisame was nowhere in key range. This was arranged, this was intentional. This was the final conversation between brothers that had been building for years. Sasuke stepped forward, his Sharingan activated. 3 Tomoe. Then, with a pulse of will that pushed through him like an electric current, the Manjikyo. The new pattern bloomed in his eyes, red and black shifting into the unique configuration that was his alone. Not borrowed, not stolen, earned. Itachi saw it. His expression, the mask, always the mask, did not change, but his eyes tracked the pattern. And something behind those eyes, something very deep, very old, very tired, moved. Sasuke said nothing. He attacked. The fight was everything it was supposed to be. 2 Uchiha at the peak of their respective capabilities. Visual jutsu clashing against visual jutsu. Fire against fire. The Sharingan's prediction creating a dance of feints and counters that was too fast for normal eyes to follow. Rain exploded between them with every exchange. Puddles shattered. Building walls cracked from proximity to their techniques. Sasuke's Mangekyo fired. Amaterasu, the black flames, the highest level fire release, the technique that burned everything. It launched from his left eye and struck where Itachi had been standing. Itachi moved, fast, still so fast, the speed of a decade of combat experience and a body trained past what its illness allowed. They exchanged. Sasuke Susanoo began forming, purple, skeletal, the ribcage structure wrapping around his body as armor. It was incomplete, young, manifesting for the first time in real combat, unstable at the edges, burning through his chakra at a rate that would not sustain. Itachi's Susanoo answered, red, more complete. The product of years of mastery and years of dying, the Totsuka blade in one hand, the Yada mirror in another. It was stronger, it was older. It was the defense and the offense of someone who had been the best for longer than Sasuke had been trying. They clashed, Susanoo against Susanoo. The buildings around them came apart. The rain turned to steam where the techniques met. The ground cratered. Sasuke held it. He held it longer than anyone had held Itachi in years. His Manjikyo was blazing, blood running from both eyes, the cost of fresh awakening being paid in real time. He was in pain. He was losing energy. He was burning through everything he had, but he was holding, he was pressing. He was making Itachi work, and Itachi was working, for the first time in a very long time, genuinely working. Pressing his Susanoo forward, activating sequences he had not used in years, pulling from reserves that his illness had depleted and his pride had refused to acknowledge. He was fighting his brother, his little brother, the one he had done everything for, and that brother was standing against him and not falling. But the gap was still real. Itachi's experience pushed through. A feint, one that Sasuke's fresh Manjikyo could not parse fast enough. And the Totsuka blade's tip found an opening in the purple Susanoo's chest armor. It penetrated. The sealing properties activated. Sasuke's Susanoo destabilized, collapsed. He went to his knees in the rain, his chakra exhausted, his eyes burning, blood on his face and in his hands and everywhere that his new power was extracting its price. Itachi stepped toward him. The red Susanoo was gone, dismissed. Itachi stood in the rain with his Sharingan still active and his eyes still bleeding and his face carrying the mask and his hand rising towards Sasuke's forehead the way it had risen 1,000 times in their childhood, the way it had risen on the night everything ended. 2 fingers. Reaching, a hand caught his wrist. Naruto stood between them. He had moved from 20 meters away to here in the time between Itachi's hand rising and Itachi's fingers reaching. 1 step. The kind of distance closure that existed outside normal measurement. His grip on Itachi's wrist was absolute. The same grip that had caught Neji, that had caught Orochimaru, that communicated through contact alone, that movement was no longer something the other person was authorized to do without permission. He did not draw his sword. He stood with his free hand in his pocket, holding Itachi's wrist with the other, and the dark aura filled the space between them like a wall that was also a statement. Itachi's Mangekyo was active. The eye burned. The pattern spun. Amaterasu formed, black flames building at the corner of his eye, preparing to launch at point-blank range. The highest fire technique, the flames that burned everything they touched until the target was ash and memory. They hit the dark aura. They went out, not absorbed, not redirected, not consumed by a technique or a counter. They hit the dark energy surrounding Naruto's body and they died. Extinguished, like a candle walked into a storm that was so much more than the flame that the flame simply stopped pretending it had a right to exist. Itachi stared. His Mangekyo was bleeding, heavily now. The cost of overuse came with the cost of illness and the cost of fighting his brother at full capacity. He was at his limit. His body was at its limit. His legend was at its limit, and what he was looking at had just extinguished his highest technique without blinking. Naruto looked at Itachi. Their faces were close, the grip on his wrist keeping the older Uchiha within arm's reach. Blue eyes on red, rain on both of them. The courtyard destroyed around them. "He's going to kill you himself someday," Naruto said. His voice was low, just for Itachi, just between them in the rain. "You know that." Itachi's mask held, but behind it, in the microscopic shifts of muscle around his eyes, in the way his bleeding gaze moved from Naruto to the figure of his brother kneeling in the rain behind them, something was happening. Something that wanted to crack. Naruto released his wrist. "Go," he said. "If you come back before that day, I will make the day come faster." Itachi stood in the rain. His wrist hung at his side. His eyes were on Sasuke, 10 feet away, kneeling, blood on his face, Mangekyo still barely active through sheer refusal to quit. The boy he had done everything for. The boy who was supposed to kill him. The boy who was becoming strong enough to do exactly that. Not through suffering, not through the path Itachi had paved in corpses, but through something else entirely. Something in Itachi's face moved. Just a flicker. Just a fraction of a second. The mask slipped, not off, just to the side, just enough to show one instant of something underneath that was the farthest thing from hatred and the closest thing to peace, and was gone before it could be named. Then he went. Into the rain. Into the gray. His cloak disappeared into the downpour like it was made of the weather itself. Naruto crouched beside Sasuke. He looked at the Mangekyo still burning in the kid's half-closed eyes. The unique pattern, earned through surpassing rather than through loss, spinning even now through exhaustion and pain and blood. "That belongs to you," he said. "Not him. Not your ancestors' lineage. Yours." He grabbed the back of Sasuke's collar and hauled him up, the way he had hauled him at the Valley of the End, like a sack of something, without ceremony or gentleness. He slung the Uchiha over his shoulder. "Don't waste it." He walked, out of the courtyard, through the abandoned district, into the rain that was still falling because this country did not know how to stop. He lit a cigarette on the road home. It took him 3 tries in the wet. His dark chakra had to form a shell around the flame to keep the rain from killing it. He succeeded. He smoked. He carried Sasuke's unconscious weight without adjusting his pace. His face, when no one was looking, when the rain was the only witness and it did not care about expressions, was almost proud. Almost. Pain arrived on a morning that started like any other and ended like none before it. The sky above Konoha was clear. The village was functioning, rebuilt, recovered, 6 months past the invasion, and carrying the confidence of a military that had survived the worst and come out harder. Streets full of people, markets running, academy in session, the normal machinery of a village that believed on some fundamental level that the worst was behind it. Naruto felt them from the rooftop where he was eating breakfast. Rice balls, stolen from the kitchen of a restaurant that had not technically opened yet. His ki was spread wide as always, a passive sphere of awareness that covered the village and the forests beyond and the mountains beyond that. 6 presences entered range. At the same time, from different directions. 6 bodies carrying linked chakra, individual signatures connected through a central thread, a shared will distributed across separate physical forms. Each one was powerful. Each one was different. And behind all of them, distant, stationary, the engine behind the machine, a seventh presence. The real one. The source. Naruto set his rice ball down. He looked north. He said, finally. He had been waiting. Not nervously. Naruto did not do nervous, but with the patient awareness of someone who knows something is coming and has decided to be present when it arrives. Since Itachi's retreat, since the intelligence about Akatsuki's movements, since the pieces on the board started moving in patterns that pointed here, he stood. He picked up his katana, he slung it onto his shoulder. Below him, the village was still normal, still functioning, still carrying its mourning with the ignorance of a place that did not know what was about to walk through its gates. The first explosion hit the eastern wall. The 6 paths of pain entered Konoha from every direction simultaneously. Each body was different. Different capabilities, different techniques, different approaches to the same objective. Find the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. Konoha's defense activated. Anbu materialized on rooftops. Jonin deployed from their stations. The barrier team fired detection alerts. The village military moved with the efficiency of a system that had been tested 6 months ago and had spent every day since preparing for the next test. They slowed the 6 paths. Individual fights broke out across the village. Jonin-level defenders against God-level invaders. The gap was real, but so was the dedication. Buildings fell, streets cracked. The village took damage and kept fighting because that was what Konoha did. The Deva path hit the center. It descended from above, floating, the Rinnegan burning in its eyes, chakra rods extending from its body like a crown made of murder. It hovered above the main plaza and raised its hands. Shinra Tensei. The full repulsion. Everything in a 200-meter radius was pushed. Not gently, not gradually, with a gravitational force that turned buildings into components and streets into rubble and the entire city block into a crater. The sound was beyond sound. The destruction was beyond anything the village had seen since its founding. A silence filled the space where a neighborhood used to be. Then a figure landed in the center of the crater. The impact cracked the exposed bedrock. The dark aura came off him in waves, visible now, black mist curling from his shoulders, his arms, the edge of his blade, pouring off him like smoke from something that burned in a color the world had never named. Every fighter in eyeshot, friend and enemy, felt it hit. The allied fighters felt resolve. Something in the pressure said, I am here now. The enemy felt something else entirely. The 6 paths converged. Whatever their other objectives had been, whatever their distributed search pattern was meant to accomplish, it all redirected. 6 bodies, 6 sets of Rinnegan eyes, all focusing on the single figure standing in the center of a crater with a katana on his shoulder and a flat expression that said his mourning had been interrupted and he was going to end this quickly. The Prita path came first, built to absorb. Its palm extended toward Naruto, the ability that consumed any chakra-based technique, that rendered ninjutsu useless, that made the 6 paths immune to the conventional tools of warfare. It touched the dark aura. The absorption activated. The Prita path began pulling in the dark energy, consuming it, taking it into its system the way it consumed everything. For 1 second it worked. The energy flowed into the body. The path system accepted it. Then the system stalled. The dark energy was too dense, too heavy, too fundamentally incompatible with the system trying to process it. The Prita path's body convulsed, every chakra circuit overloading simultaneously, the internal architecture burning out under the strain of trying to contain something it was never designed to hold. The body seized, collapsed, went still, one down. The Asura path fired. Missiles, the mechanical armaments hidden in a body modified beyond recognition, multiple warheads launching from arms that opened like weapons platforms. 6 projectiles converging on Naruto from different angles. Naruto activated Mana Zone. The sphere expanded. 40 meters, 50, the dark energy filling every inch, claiming the space, making it his. The missiles entered the zone and spiraled, their guidance systems overwhelmed by the foreign energy flooding their pathways, their propulsion destabilized, their warheads consumed before detonation. 6 missiles became 6 streaks of light that curved inward and disappeared into the dark. 2 down, The Asura path, stripped of its weapons, stepped forward with mechanical fists and met a backhanded slap from Naruto's free hand that separated its head from its shoulders. The animal path summoned. The ground erupted with creatures, massive, ancient, carrying the Rinnegan in their own eyes. A giant dog, a giant bird, a giant centipede. They filled the space around the mana zone's edge and pressed inward. They hit the sphere. The dark energy consumed them. Not instantly. They were large, they were powerful, they pushed, but the consumption was inevitable. The dark energy got into their summoning contracts, into the chakra that held them in this world, and erased it. The summons collapsed into smoke. Dismissed. The animal path that had called them stood alone, defenseless, and a dimensional slash from inside the mana zone cut it apart before it could raise another sign. The Naraka path tried to approach from below, the human path from behind, both of them entering the mana zone at the same time, from different vectors, operating on the assumption that distributed attention would create an opening. Naruto's ki mapped them both before they crossed the threshold. He did not move, he did not turn. He stood with his eyes closed and dark energy flowing from him in all directions. He opened his eyes. Dark magic, dark cloak dimension / equinox. The sphere became a blade. Every point within it, every direction, every inch of space that the mana zone occupied became a cutting edge that existed for one instant, one terrible, absolute instant, and then was gone. The Naraka path hit the ground in pieces. The human path followed. The ground itself was scored with impossibly thin lines. The air held the afterimage of what had just happened, the faint shimmer of reality having been opened and closed in the same breath. 5 bodies down. 1 remained. The Deva path floated above. The strongest, the most directly linked to the true source, the one carrying the full gravitational capabilities of the Rinnegan. It looked down at Naruto with eyes that held a philosophy, a belief system built on suffering and powered by grief, and maintained through the absolute certainty that pain was the only teacher that mattered. It raised its hands. 5 seconds. The gravitational technique was building, the full repulsion, the same force that had created the crater they were standing in, the same force that had leveled a city block. Naruto looked up at it. The Deva Path's chakra rod materialized, condensed from the ambient energy, formed into a physical lance, and drove downward. Fast. A projectile powered by the Rinnegan's gravity push, aimed at Naruto's chest with the force of something that believed itself divine. It hit Naruto's left shoulder. It punched through. He bled. The rod stuck in him through muscle, through the joint, dark blood running down his arm and dripping off his fingertips. He did not fall. He looked at his shoulder. He looked at the rod. He looked up at the Deva path with an expression that was impossibly mildly annoyed, like someone had poked him with a stick during his nap. He grabbed the rod. His hand closed around the chakra condensed material and his dark energy flooded into it, consuming the construct from the inside, unraveling the Rinnegan's signature, eating the will that held it together. He pulled it out. Blood ran. His jaw was tight. His eyes were flat. He reversed the rod in his grip, holding it like a javelin, like something he had no respect for and intended to return with interest. He threw it. The rod left his hand with his full arm strength behind it. The dark energy coating it added mass, weight that compounded with speed and turned a thrown projectile into something that hit like a siege weapon. It crossed the distance between ground and air in less time than the Deva Path could rebuild its gravitational shield. It punched through the body's chest. The Deva Path's defensive barrier, the gravity manipulation that deflected everything, tried to activate and found a hole in its own chest where the activation mechanism used to be. The body dropped. It hit the ground with a sound that was final in a way that mattered. 6 down. Naruto stood in the center of a crater surrounded by 6 divine bodies. His shoulder was bleeding. His jacket had a hole in it. His cigarette was gone, burned up at some point in the mana zone's activation. He was breathing. His heart rate had increased by approximately 10%. Tsunade arrived. She landed in the crater with a crack of displaced air, her green jacket flowing behind her, her eyes taking in the scene with the particular expression of a Hokage who was processing the fact that a single shinobi had just dismantled a god-level threat in under 3 minutes. She looked at the 6 bodies. She looked at Naruto. She looked at his shoulder. She said he needed that looked at. He said, "I need a bathroom." She stared at him. He said, "Priorities." The real pain made contact. Naruto felt the communication channel, a surviving link through one of the damaged paths, a voice reaching across distance from a distant location where the true body sat, frail and powerful and alone. Nagato spoke. His voice was young, younger than the legend suggested. He spoke of suffering, of peace through pain, of a world that could only be changed by hurting everyone equally until they understood what understanding cost. He had rehearsed this speech. He had delivered it before. He believed every word the way a person believes in oxygen. Naruto listened. He stood in the crater. His shoulder was sealed. The dark energy had closed the wound already, the dense chakra accelerating repair the way it always did. He had a fresh cigarette between his lips. He listened to the entire philosophy, the pain, the understanding, the cycle, the solution. He smoked. Then he said, "That's a lot of words for someone who just lost everybody they sent." Nagato's voice paused. The channel was silent for 3 seconds. Nagato said Naruto had power, but did not understand what it was for. That power without direction was just destruction. That someone who could do what Naruto had done needed a purpose, or they would become the thing the world feared most. Naruto took a drag. He blew smoke into the crater air. He said, "Power is for ending things. I ended the 6 bodies. If you want to end this, come down yourself." The channel went silent. 5 minutes passed. Then a presence entered Naruto's ki range, approaching from the north, slow, carried. It was frail, it was dying, and it was radiating a will that was enormous despite the body being barely able to contain it. Nagato came, carried in a mechanical walker. Paper wings behind him, Conan, the angel, supporting the prophet's body through the distance. He was thin, wasted, more metal than man, the chakra rods protruding from his back like a forest of dark intention. His eyes, the Rinnegan, the original, the real, burned in a face that was too young for the weight it carried. He looked at Naruto. Naruto looked at him. The expectation was clear in Nagato's eyes. He expected either a mirror, someone who had suffered and built a system from the suffering, or a rejection, someone who would argue about the value of peace through pain. He expected engagement with his philosophy. He expected to be taken seriously as a thinker. What he got was someone who did not have a philosophy about suffering. What he got was a person who had lost everything at birth, family, name, a place in the world, the basic human right to be wanted, and had decided, without constructing a single framework around the loss, to be strong, full stop. No meaning, no system, no elaborate justification. Just the absolute refusal to be weak, and the power that came from that refusal taken to its logical endpoint. Nagato looked at this, at the flat eyes, at the smoking cigarette, at the absence of angst, the absence of manifesto, the absence of anything that suggested this person had ever once sat with their pain and built a church out of it. He found something he had not encountered since Yahiko died. Someone who existed without being defined by what broke them. Someone who was whole in a way that did not require the world to change before they could function. It was unsettling. It was clarifying. It was in a way that made Nagato's chest hurt in a place the chakra rods could not explain. Beautiful. He did not join Konoha. He did not become a different person. His beliefs did not evaporate under one conversation. But something in the foundation shifted. Something in the absolute certainty developed a crack. And through that crack, a different light entered. One that suggested maybe, a world could change without everyone in it suffering first. He said, "You are something I did not expect." Naruto said, "Go home." Nagato looked at him for a long moment. Then he turned. Conan supported him. They went north, into the distance, carrying the Rinnegan and the paper wings, and the cracking philosophy away from a village that had proven itself stronger than the test. Naruto watched them go. He finished his cigarette. He looked at the crater around him, the destroyed plaza, the rubble, the bodies of 6 divine constructs that would need cleanup. He went to find a bathroom. 2 weeks after pain, the village was rebuilding again. Naruto was on a rooftop. Temari was beside him. She had arrived 2 days after the battle, not as a diplomat this time, as herself. She had heard what happened. She had left the sand without filing paperwork, which was unlike her, which said everything about the state she was in when the report arrived. She had found him on this rooftop the night she arrived. He had been sleeping. She had sat down beside him and said nothing. He had opened one eye, looked at her, closed it again. They had been coming here every evening since. Tonight, the stars were out. Konoha breathed below them. Somewhere in the village, Lee was doing midnight push-ups. The sound of his fists hitting the ground carried on the night air like a heartbeat. Guy was crying about something. Always was. Naruto's katana was across his knees. An unlit cigarette rested on his lip. His eyes were closed. His ki was spread wide, covering the village, the forests, the approach routes. Always watching, always aware, he opened his eyes. Tamari felt the shift in his posture. The way his weight changed, the way the dark aura, low and warm beside her for 2 weeks, suddenly gained an edge. She said, "What?" He said, "I need to go." She asked where. He said, "Something old is coming this way." She asked how old. He looked at her. His face was carrying something she had not seen before. Not concern, not fear, but the focused attention of someone who has identified the thing they have been waiting for without knowing they were waiting. He said, "Old enough that most things that tried to fight it are dead." She looked at him, green eyes on blue. The rooftop was between them, and the stars were above them, and the village was below them, and neither of them moved for 5 seconds. She did not say, "Be careful." She knew better. She knew him. She knew what "be careful" sounded like to a person who walked through Sannin and tailed beasts and 6-bodied gods without adjusting his heartbeat. She said, "Kill it." He looked at her. Something in his expression changed. Barely, small, the way enormous things happen in gestures that fit between heartbeats. The corner of his mouth moved. His eyes held hers with something in them that was past fondness, and before a word he would never use, and was exactly the thing she knew it was. He said, "Yeah." He picked up his katana. He stood. He looked at her one more time, sitting on the tiles, hair down for the night, fan leaning against the roof ledge behind her, looking up at him with the face of someone who had made peace with what she chose and would be here when it was done. He left. She watched him go, over the rooftop edge, dropping into the street, disappearing into the dark with the speed that meant he was moving towards something rather than away. She watched until there was nothing to watch. She looked down. On the tiles beside where he had been sitting, his lighter. Left behind. Something he never forgot because it was as permanent as his cigarettes and his sword. She picked it up. She held it. She did not name what she was holding. She did not need to. The forest outside Konoha, 3 miles east. A clearing that existed because the trees had learned centuries ago that nothing grew in this spot. The soil was different here, older, carrying something in its composition that predated the village, the nation, the era. Moonless night. The dark was complete. No stars reached this clearing. The canopy above was too thick and the night was too heavy, and the thing approaching was casting its own shadow before it arrived. Naruto stood in the center of the clearing, katana drawn, dark energy flowing from him in a constant state, not rising, not resting, present, the way it always was, the way he always was. He felt the presence before he saw it. Madara Uchiha walked out of the tree line. He was tall, broad, armored in the fashion of a dead era, red plates over a black mesh suit, the kind of protection that belonged in history books and museums. His hair was long and black and wild, falling past his shoulders in a mane that framed a face carved from the same stone as the statues at the Valley of the End. His eyes burned, the eternal Makio Sharingan in one, the Rinnegan in the other, both active, both spinning, both filled with the force of a personality that had bent the world's history around itself. The presence he brought with him was crushing, a physical weight, the kind of killing intent that was not a technique but a condition, the ambient state of someone who had killed so many people and broken so many things that the violence had become atmospheric. It filled the clearing. It pressed against the trees. It pushed. Naruto felt it hit his own aura and watched the two pressures meet in the space between them. Dark energy against ancient intent, dense against dense, immovable against irresistible. Madara looked at him. His expression carried the faint appreciation of one overwhelming force recognizing another across a space that was too small to contain both of them comfortably. Impressive, Madara said. His voice was deep. Old, carrying the authority of someone who had once been the most feared name on the planet and had never accepted that the title had passed. For a child. Naruto looked back at him. Blue eyes flat, cigarette gone. He had stubbed it out on the walk here. The katana hung at his side, dark energy already flowing through the metal without being directed. You done? Madara moved. The speed was real. S-rank movement, decades of battlefield experience compressed into reflexes that operated beyond conscious thought. He closed the distance between them in a fraction of a second, his right hand forming signs while his left drew a blade from the seal on his wrist, and his Rinnegan was already calculating 6 moves ahead. Fire release. The jutsu formed between his hands, not a standard technique, but something ancient, something that predated the classification system. A wall of white flame that filled the clearing from ground to canopy in a single burst. Naruto stepped through it. His dark aura parted the flame the way a ship parts water, the fire splitting around his body without touching him, consumed at the edges by the dark energy's density. He emerged on the other side with his jacket smoking slightly at the hems and his expression unchanged. His katana came up. One slash, horizontal, chest height, dark energy flooding the blade. Dark magic, dark cloaked EI slash. The slash launched. Madara's Rinnegan tracked it. He substituted, the basic technique, performed at a level that made it look like teleportation. The slash hit the space he had been and cut through 3 trees behind it without slowing. Madara appeared behind Naruto. His blade, ancient, keyed to his chakra, a weapon that had killed Hashirama Senju himself, drove toward Naruto's spine. Naruto's ki had him. Before the substitution completed, before the blade started its arc, he turned, smooth, unhurried, and his katana met Madara's weapon with a sound that was not a ring but a detonation. The dark energy on Naruto's blade made contact with the ancient chakra in Madara's, and it began eating. Madara felt it. The centuries of stored energy in his family blade being pulled out, consumed, erased, eaten by a force that did not negotiate. His eyes narrowed. He disengaged, pulling his weapon free, backing 3 steps, reassessing. Amaterasu. The Mangekyo eye blazed. Black flames erupted, not from his hand but from the space around Naruto, forming at the points his visual jutsu designated, the flames that burned everything, the flames that could not be extinguished. The highest fire technique available to the Uchiha bloodline, the black fire formed around Naruto's body. It closed. It touched the dark aura. It died. Every point of flame that contacted the dark energy surrounding Naruto's body went out, not suppressed, not consumed by a counter technique. Extinguished. The way a match dies in a hurricane, not through opposition, but through the sheer irrelevance of its heat against something so much greater that comparison was insult. Madara's expression changed. The first time in this fight, the aristocratic amusement shifted, just slightly, just at the edges. What replaced it was not fear. It was the recognition of a person who has, for the first time in decades, encountered something that makes his best weapons look like toys. He formed the hand signs. Massive scale. The chakra flowing through his system was enormous, tailed beast equivalent, the reservoir of someone who had augmented his own body with Hashirama's cells decades ago. Full Susanoo. The construct formed around him. Towering, blue, armored in plates of condensed chakra, thick enough to block any known technique. It grew. 20 meters, 30. The legendary blade formed in its hand, a weapon made of pure chakra, long enough to bisect buildings, dense enough to split mountains. The forest around it was crushed by its emergence. Trees flattened, ground cratered, the clearing expanding by force as the construct demanded space. The Susanoo looked down at Naruto. Naruto looked up at it. The blade swung. The impact created a 50-meter crater. The shockwave stripped trees from the ground for 100 meters in every direction. The sound was past hearing, a bass so deep it was felt in the chest rather than the ears. Naruto stood in the crater. He had not moved. His katana was raised. One hand, the dark energy coating it so thick that the blade was invisible under the black. The Susanoo's blade had struck his katana directly, and the dark energy had taken the hit, absorbed the force, consumed the cutting edge, eaten the power behind the swing the way it ate everything. His arm was trembling. That was new. The force of that blow was the first thing in his life, that had made his arm shake. The dark energy had caught it, but he had felt it. Every ounce Madara saw the tremble. His confidence surged. The Susanu's blade rose again. Naruto looked at the giant construct above him. The greatest defensive and offensive technique the Uchiha bloodline could produce. A presence equivalent to a tailed beast. The weapon of someone who had fought the god of shinobi himself and walked away. He said, "That's a nice toy." He sheathed his katana. He put both hands at his sides, palms down, fingers spread. The dark energy flooding his system responded, all of it. Every reserve, every depth, every layer of the dense viscous power that filled his body and went past his body and existed in the space around him like an extension of his will. Mana zone. The sphere expanded, not 40 meters, not 50, 100 meters, 200. The entire battlefield consumed by his will, his energy, his dominion. The dark chakra claimed the space, every cubic meter, every direction, every angle. The air turned black, the ground turned black. The world within the sphere was his. Naruto raised his head. He looked at the perfect Susanoo standing inside his sphere, inside his territory, inside the space where his word was the only law. Dark magic, dark cloak dimension / equinox. The slashes came from everywhere, not from Naruto's position. From everywhere within the mana zone, from above, from below, from every lateral angle, from directions that should not have existed. The dark energy filling the sphere converted into cutting force. Dimensional blades releasing from every point simultaneously, crossing the space in every direction at once, turning the entire 200-meter sphere into a three-dimensional lattice of absolute cutting power. The forest within the sphere ceased to exist. The ground within the sphere ceased to exist. The air within the sphere ceased to exist. Everything in the space was being cut by the dimension itself. Every point a blade, every direction a slash. The world within the mana zone was being unmade and remade in the same instant. The perfect Susanoo took it for 2 seconds. The armor, thick enough to block any known technique, dense enough to stop tailed beast bombs, held against the dimensional slashes for 2 full seconds. Then the slashes found the spaces, between the plates, between the chakra layers, between the molecules of condensed energy that held the armor together. The dimensional cuts did not break the Susanoo. They found where the Susanoo was not, and they made those places larger, and the places where it was became smaller, and the structure that held it together lost coherence. It split. The perfect Susanoo came apart. Not dramatically, not in an explosion or a collapse. It separated, piece by piece, the armor splitting along the dimensional lines that had been cut through its binding. The arms fell away. The torso separated. The legendary blade split at the middle, and both halves dissolved into loose chakra that was immediately consumed by the dark energy still filling the space. The construct was gone. Madara stood in open air. Armor gone. Weapons gone. Susanoo gone. His Mangekyo was bleeding, both eyes streaming red, the cost of the highest technique being destroyed. His Rinnegan was flickering. The gravitational techniques he had been preparing as backup, failing to activate in a space that was so thoroughly claimed by foreign energy that his own will could not find purchase. He was bleeding. A dimensional slash had found his right side during the collapse. A thin line of red across his ribs, not deep, not fatal, but present. He was, for the first time in decades, genuinely damaged. He looked at Naruto across the ruined space, the crater that used to be a forest, the absence that used to be ground, the darkness that still filled the air. Naruto walked to him. The mana zone was settling, contracting, pulling back, the dark energy returning to its resting state against his body. The sphere collapsed inward. The night sky became visible again, the dark replacing the dark, natural above unnatural below. He stood in front of Madara, 3 feet away. His katana was sheathed. His hands were at his sides. His jacket was gone, shredded in the exchange, lost somewhere in the dimensional slash zone. His black undershirt was torn. A cut above his left eye was closing. The dark energy sealing the edges, pulling the skin together with visible speed. His face was flat. His breathing was steady. His heart rate was elevated but slowing. He looked Madara Uchiha in the eye, the most dangerous human on the planet, the man who fought the first Hokage, the man who planned to enslave the world through the moon itself. And his expression carried nothing but finality. You're the kind of person who thinks the world exists to be conquered." His voice was low, real, carrying the weight of absolute conviction delivered without volume. "Go home, old man. There is nothing here for you." Madara stood still. The blood ran from his side. His eyes, one Manjikyo, one Rinnegan, were fixed on Naruto's face. He was reading everything he could read: the power, the intent, the absolute lack of bluff, the certainty, bone deep, that the person standing in front of him would do exactly what needed to be done if this continued. Madara said Naruto would not kill him. Naruto said, "If you have to come back here, I will." Silence. The night held its breath. The ruined forest around them was motionless. No wind, no insects, nothing alive within the blast radius except the two of them and the conversation between them. Madara looked at Naruto for a long time. His expression shifted, not to fear, not to anger, but to something older than both. Something that might have been respect if respect were a concept Madara Uchiha applied to anyone born after his own era. He turned. He began walking into the dark. His back was broad, his step was steady, and the weight of his presence receded with him like a tide going out. Without turning back, he said, "You are the first in 100 years who has earned the right to send me away." He walked into the night, into the dark between the destroyed trees, into history where he belonged, where the world had moved past him, whether he accepted it or not. Naruto watched him disappear. He stood in the crater, alone, torn shirt, blood sealed, the night above him vast and empty, and finally still. He looked at the ground around his feet. Rubble, destruction, the remnants of the most powerful fight that had happened on this continent in a lifetime. Something glinted in the debris. He crouched. He picked it up, a cigarette, half smoked, impossibly intact. The universe had preserved it, a small allowance, a concession from reality to a person who had earned one. He put it between his lips. He lit it with a small burst of dark energy from his thumbnail. He stood. He inhaled. He let the smoke out slow, up into the moonless sky, dissolving against the stars that were beginning to show through the settling dust. He said to nobody, "What a pain in the ass." He went home. He came back to the roof. She was still there, sitting where he had left her, legs extended toward the edge, back against the raised portion of the roof's center structure. His lighter was in her hand. She had been turning it over between her fingers, the motion of someone whose hands needed occupation while their mind was elsewhere. She turned when she heard him hit the tiles. The sound of his landing, heavier than usual, the fatigue of a body that had output more than anything he had done before, even though it would not admit fatigue to its owner. She looked at his shredded jacket, gone, revealing the torn black undershirt beneath, the cut above his eye, already closed, already sealed, already a thin pale line that would be invisible by morning, the cigarette between his teeth, the face that had not changed its expression since he left, the katana on his shoulder, as always, as permanent as gravity. She said, "Is it done?" He said, "Yeah." She said nothing for a moment. She looked at him. The full assessment, the reading of his body language, the cataloging of damage that would heal, and the understanding that what had happened tonight would not be explained in detail because that was not who he was. She said, "Sit down before you fall down." He said he was not going to fall down. She said, "Sit down anyway." He sat beside her on the tiles, closer than they had sat before. Their shoulders were near enough that the dark aura pressed against her, not heavy, not crushing, warm, the resting state of something enormous that had decided this person was not something to push away. She did not move. He did not pretend not to notice. That was the thing about them. Neither pretended, neither performed, neither did the work of making things smaller to fit into categories that other people used. They were what they were, and what they were was enough for both of them. She held out his lighter. He took it. His fingers closed around the metal, warm from her hands, from an evening of holding it, from the particular heat of a person who had sat on a roof for hours waiting for someone to come back and had never once doubted they would. Their hands were close, his fingers and hers, the lighter between them in the space where possession was transferring from one grip to another, and neither of them was in a hurry to complete the exchange. Neither of them pulled back. That was a thing that happened without being named. They sat. The stars moved the way they always did, indifferent to what happened below them, carrying their ancient paths without comment. Konoha breathed below the rooftop. The lights of the village, windows, street lamps, the Hokage Tower's beacon, spread out beneath them like a map of everyone they had fought for without once thinking of it in those terms. Somewhere in the village, Lee was doing midnight push-ups. The sound carried, regular, rhythmic, the fists of someone who would never stop hitting the ground rising from it. Guy was beside him, crying about the beauty of dedication, his voice carrying through the night air with the particular resonance of a man whose emotions operated at a volume that physics simply allowed without questioning. Tenten was asleep somewhere with her notebook on her chest, the seventh one, filled front to back with observations and measurements and the accumulated documentation of what it meant to share a team with Naruto Uzumaki. Neji was at a window, looking at the night sky with the Byakugan dormant and his face carrying an expression that had been changing for months, the tightly sealed composure loosening, the armor of fate and destiny and cage giving way to something underneath that was uncertain and new and getting less afraid of itself every day. Naruto smoked. Temari watched the sky. The wound above his eye was already invisible. His breathing was even. His heart rate was normal. The night was theirs. She said he was going to keep doing this. He asked what? She said running toward things that would kill anyone else. He said yeah. She looked at him. Green eyes steady, her face carrying something that was not worry and not resignation. It was acceptance. The specific acceptance of a person who understood what they were choosing and chose it anyway. Not despite the danger, but including it, folding it into the whole picture of what this person was, and deciding the picture was what she wanted. She said, I know. She said it the way you say something that is not a complaint. It was the closest thing to a declaration either of them would ever produce, and it was enough. It was more than enough. He looked at her. He said she could stay in Konoha. She said she could. He said it was a good village. She said it had its moments. He said the bathroom lines were a problem. She almost smiled. Almost. The corner of her mouth moved, barely, just enough that his key read the shift in her facial muscles and cataloged it as the closest thing to a smile she had produced since arriving. She said, I'll stay. He took a drag. He looked at the stars. The smoke trailed upward and dissolved against the dark. He said, good. Morning came the way morning always came, without asking permission, without checking if the people beneath it were ready. The sun broke over the eastern wall and painted Konoha in gold and sharp shadow, and the particular quality of new light that made everything look possible. Naruto walked through the streets. He was too big for them. Had always been too big for them. The way a river is too big for a creek bed, present regardless, flowing through the space because that was where it went, and the space would adjust or it would not. Civilians gave him half a step of clearance without knowing why. Shopkeepers nodded as he passed, the kind of nod that carried weight, that meant something beyond greeting, that was the accumulated respect of a village that knew what stood among them, even if they could not articulate why they knew it. He was not the Hokage. He would never be the Hokage. The hat was a cage for someone like him. Paperwork, ceremony, the endless bureaucracy of leading humans. That was not what he was for. What he was for was simpler and heavier. When the gate breaks, he would be there. When the sky falls, he would be standing under it. When the worst thing in the world comes for the people behind him, it would find something worse waiting. The village knew this. In the way villages know things without writing them down. In the way a body knows where its armor is without looking. He found Training Ground 9. The morning was gold. The trees were old. The ground was soft with years of training and years of growth, and years of a team becoming something that the village had never seen before. Lee was mid-push-up, 437, his mouth open in the particular silent scream of a body being pushed past its comfort zone by a will that did not believe in comfort zones. His form was perfect. His speed was constant. His key sense was active. Naruto could feel it. The faint extension of awareness that Lee had built from nothing, through pure dedication and the absolute refusal to accept that anything was impossible. Tenten was calibrating a new weapon. A chain and sickle combination, experimental, something she had designed herself based on observations she had been collecting for a year. Her focus was absolute. Her hands moved with the precision of someone who had thrown 100,000 weapons and knew the weight and balance of each one the way most people knew their own name. Neji was running forms, the gentle fist flowing through him, water through carved channels, the art of his family refined and evolved. His stance was lower than it had been a year ago. His center of gravity was different, adapted, influenced, carrying the echo of a correction Naruto had never given him directly, but which he had absorbed from watching. From being on a team with someone whose body mechanics were so efficient that proximity alone was instructive, Guy was crying, fist raised, mouth open, the sound of his voice, passionate, enormous, carrying the full force of a man whose emotions were weapons and whose weapons were emotions, filled the training ground. The flames of youth burn eternal, my students, my magnificent team, the most glorious. Naruto walked to his log, the one that was always his, the one that nobody sat on when he was absent, not because he had claimed it or marked it or threatened anyone about it, but because the space simply belonged to him in a way that needed no enforcement. He sat, feet up, katana across his knees, eyes closed. The morning sun hit his face. The training ground's familiar sounds surrounded him. Lee's push-ups, Tenten's weapon work, Neji's forms, Guy's volume, home. Lee spotted him. The sound he produced disturbed birds a quarter-mile away, a frequency of joy that existed outside normal human vocal range and which Lee achieved through sheer enthusiasm. Naruto-kun, you're back! I have been training all night in honor of your... Brows. Yes, Naruto-kun. Shut up. I'm sleeping. Magnificent return! The flames of youth burn in your very presence. The inspiration, I'm gonna kill you. You always say that, and it always fills me with inspiration. Naruto opened one eye. He looked at Lee. The kid, was he still a kid? He was taller now, broader, carrying muscle that had been built through a year of insane effort and real instruction, and the kind of growth that happened when someone with no natural talent met someone with no patience for excuses. He was glowing. Joy, dedication, the energy of a person who found the thing that made sense of everything else and decided to run toward it every single day for the rest of their life, regardless of whether it ran back. He said, "How's the key sense coming?" Lee's expression shifted. The noise, all of it, the volume, the enthusiasm, the surface level everything, settled into something deeper, something serious and real and alive in a way that the volume sometimes masked. He pressed his fist to his chest. He said he felt the battle last night. From the village. He felt when Naruto activated the full mana zone. He felt it here, in his chest, in the place where Ki lived, in the sense that Naruto had given him through nothing more than pointing him in the right direction and trusting that his legs would carry him there. Naruto said, "Good. That means you're getting it." Lee made a sound. It was not a word. It was not a scream. It was the vocal manifestation of an emotion so large and so genuine that language could not contain it. His eyes were wet. His fists were clenched. He dropped back into his push-ups at double speed. Tears on his face, knuckles impacting the ground with renewed force, every rep a promise, and every exhale a dedication. Guy appeared beside Naruto's log. He was not doing a speech. He was just standing, arms at his sides, face wet from crying, looking at his team with an expression that went past pride and into something more permanent. He looked at Lee, at Tenten, at Neji, at Naruto. He said, "I am proud of all of you." He said it simply, without volume, without theatrics, the way a person says something they mean so completely that decoration would diminish it. Naruto said, "Don't get sentimental, Spandex." Guy said, "Too late." He was crying again, harder. The sunset appeared behind him, orange and gold and entirely impossible given that it was 8 in the morning and the sun was in the east and physics had not changed overnight. The universe simply allowed this for Guy. It always had. It always would. Footsteps on the training ground's entrance path. Light, even, carrying the particular cadence of someone who belonged where they were walking and knew it. Tamari's voice came from behind Naruto. Sharp, familiar, carrying the specific irritation of a person who has found something to be annoyed about and is going to express that annoyance with precision. You left your lighter on the rooftop again. That's the second time this week. The least you could do is put it in a pocket like a functional person. Naruto did not open his eyes. He did not turn. He did not move from his position on the log. Feet up, katana across his knees, cigarette between his lips, but the corner of his mouth moved. Not a smile. Not exactly. The closest thing to one he had ever willingly produced in public, the microscopic upward shift at the edge of his lips that Lee would have needed the key sense to detect, and Neji would have needed the Byakugan, and Tenten would have written about in her notebook, and Guy would have wept over, and Tamari, standing behind him, fan on her back, lighter in her extended hand, green eyes on the back of his blonde head, knew was there without seeing it. The morning was gold. The team was together. The village was behind them. The woman who would be on the roof when he came back was here now, and the log was his, and the cigarette burned between his teeth, and somewhere in the distance a bird was singing the way birds sing when the world is not under attack, and the person keeping it that way is right where he belongs. Lee screamed about youth. Guy sobbed about flames. Tenten wrote something in her notebook. Neji almost smiled. Naruto sat on his log and existed. Massive, present, immovable. The same thing he had always been. The same thing he would always be. Not softer, not changed, not diminished by peace or diminished by love or diminished by anything, because what he was did not diminish. It endured. It remained. It sat on a log in Training Ground 9 with its feet up and its eyes closed and its team around it and its village behind it and its person standing 3 feet away holding a lighter like a question that had already been answered. The morning continued. The sun rose higher. The world turned the way worlds do. Forward, always forward, toward whatever came next, and whatever came next would find him here.
Thanks for watching this absolute banger. If you want more savage what-ifs that hit different, smash subscribe and turn on notifications. More fire coming your way.